her own coldness. As they were talking, the three of them had already arrived at Bafong village. Under the bright white sunlight, in an open space near the village entrance, except for two mutant chickens clucking around in the open space, there was no one else wandering around in such a scorching sun. Su and the other two parked the car and got out. Li Xiaoyu helped Brother Abeo carry food from the truck bed. Su, with a full stomach, took 2 steps towards the villa where her parents lived. She then remembered the mutant bush planted under the village wall, so she changed direction and planned to go and take a look at the bush first. As soon as she stepped onto the open space, soldiers and survivors came out from the villas in groups of 3 or 4 under the scorching sun and helped Brother Abeo carry the table and put away the vegetable bowls and rice buckets. Because Yu and other Special Forces soldiers had gone somewhere unknown today, all the gangsters were taken back to Bafong Villa to replace Yu and others and serve as guards in Bafong Villa. So today, only Brother Abeo came to deliver food. Li Xiaoyu was very conscious. Without Brother Abeo asking or Su telling her, she took the initiative to pick up the big spoon and put food into the bowls of people who were already in line. The food in Bafong village is very good. The chicken is chopped into small pieces and cooked very fragrantly. Today, it is served with a large pot of vegetables and another pot of chicken soup. The dishes in each large pot are very satisfying. Li Xiaoyu just takes a large spoonful and puts it in people's bowls, which makes the amount of dishes piled up. Su walked to the iron gate at the entrance of the village and looked back. She found that more and more survivors and soldiers had come out, holding their bowls under the scorching sun and queuing up to get their meals. A woman also came out of the villa, where Mei Xingnan lived not far away. She was wearing a lace nightgown and holding a bowl in her hand. It seemed that she was also planning to queue up for meals. Su smiled, opened a small door on the heavy iron gate, and walked out of the earthen wall. Due to limited conditions, this earthen wall was made entirely of soil dug out from the trenches, mixed with some stones condensed by earth-type psychics. The simply piled-up earthen wall could not withstand any attack from heavy firepower, and even the psychics' supernatural powers could not stop it. But it is still possible to deal with some zombies and mutant beasts. Seeing these coolies working hard every day and digging trenches that almost surround half of Bafong village, Su's father is thinking about organizing a few gold-type psychics in the near future to cover the temporary earth walls with a layer of metal cover. The 2 watchtowers near the village gate can also be mixed with some metal to make them more sturdy and durable. The trench was not deep, only about 1 person high. There were some sharp thorns in the trench at the entrance of the village. The bushes she asked Brother Abeo to plant last time had already flourished among the thorns. They were much more lush than those by the wall of Bafong Villa. In just a few days, they had grown to about 3 or 4 plants. It seems that the land in the countryside is not as peaceful and tranquil as people imagine. Animals and plants are also competing for underground space. The road connecting to the village entrance has been hollowed out a bit under the design of Su's father. He plans to make the village entrance into the shape of a bridge. When the conditions are ripe, he will put something under the bridge that can resist foreign invasion, such as water, thorns, or mutated bushes. After inspecting the bushes and trenches, Su stood at the entrance of the village again, looking at the path ahead under the scorching sun. It was quiet without any movement, only the scorching sun raging on the earth. I wonder how Yu and the others can stand the scorching sun in such hot weather, wearing such thick desert camouflage uniforms and tactical vests. Thinking of this, Su stood there for a while. She felt that her stomach was a little tight after standing for a long time with such a big belly. She turned around and walked into the small door, intending to go see Su's father and mother. There were still 2 long lines of people in the open space, waiting for Brother Abeo and Li Xiaoyu to get their meals. Su occasionally glanced over and found a man wearing a casual t-shirt of a survivor. He got 2 bowls of rice from Li Xiaoyu and walked to a man squatting in the corner. There was nothing much to say about queuing up to get food for teammates, but Su's 5 senses were sharper than those of ordinary people. Her eyes followed the fat man with 2 bowls of rice and fixed on the man squatting in the corner. She looked more closely and found that the squatting man was a person with superpowers. Moreover, his level is not low. He is a wood-type mutant who is just past the 3rd level. A 3rd level wood-type mutant would have a high status in any group, but Su looked at the gray clothes on the 3rd level wood-type mutant, and it was obvious that he was one of the coolies digging trenches. This is exactly what the saying goes. You can make a living with your superpowers, but you have to rely on hard labor. Why? She was thinking in her heart, and the 3rd level wood-type superpower glanced over, and through the crowd of people, his eyes met Su's. The 3rd level wood-type superpower's eyes were obviously stunned, and then he said something to the fat man who brought him food, and did not take the food from the fat man's hand. He stood up, turned around, and went to the back of the villa. There is nothing special about the scenery behind the villa. Apart from the vegetable fields, there is a wall, and outside the wall is a moat. Further away from the moat is a barren rice field. Su frowned, held her waist, and followed. She walked on the dirt road paved with small stone slabs, frowned slightly, left the bustling open space, and came to the back of the house. Across 2 or 3 vegetable gardens, she saw the 3rd level wood-type mutant, standing in a vegetable garden with his trouser legs rolled up, looking like he was waiting for her. This 3rd order wood-type mutant was tall and thin. He wore a short-sleeved t-shirt, jeans, and a pair of muddy sneakers on his bare feet. It was difficult to see the original color of the sneakers. When Su took a look at him, she felt that the eyebrows of this 3rd level wood-type mutant were dark and thick, as if they were deliberately drawn on. Su felt a little uncomfortable looking at them. She was just about to ask what this 3rd level wood-type mutant wanted to do by hiding his abilities and condescending to come to such a small Bafong villa, but she heard footsteps behind her. Su turned around and saw the fat man with 2 bowls of rice standing behind her with a greasy face. The fat man was holding a shiny black gun in his hand with a silencer on the muzzle. TSK. Su sneered, holding his waist, ignoring the fat man with a gun behind him, and just looked at the 3rd level wood-type ability user and asked very calmly, "What does this mean?" "I don't have any bad intentions. I just want to follow and see what's going on." What she said was the truth. After the end of the world, many high-level psychics were afraid of trouble. When they entered a certain group or a certain force, they would hide their strength first, observe the group for a while, and then find an opportunity to reveal their level of psychic ability, calling it amazing. Su had done such things before, so she didn't think there was anything suspicious about this 3rd level psychic. She followed him just out of curiosity. But the 3rd level wood-type mutant obviously didn't think so. His 2 small eyes under his thick eyebrows flashed with a malicious and vigilant light. He looked at Su and sneered, "Since you have discovered me, I have nothing to hide. I can take advantage of the fact that the special forces are not here today to capture you for our commander. No, I didn't find anything about you. I just followed you out of curiosity. You didn't even try to hide it and directly admitted that you are a spy. Is this really okay?" Su was shouting in her heart, but on the surface, she looked at this 3rd order wood-type mutant in silence. She immediately guessed the identity of this person. He said, "Commander? Could he be Lu Yin's man?" While Su was silently guessing, the 3rd level wood-type mutant spoke up again. "According to our commander's original plan, we were going to raise some mutant maggots here with you. When you give birth, we'll use the mutant maggots to contain you and his men, and then come and get you and your newborn baby. But since you've discovered my identity, I have to execute this plan ahead of time."
Ah.
Su looked at the man who had already told Lu Yin's entire plan in advance without even interrogating him, and suddenly asked curiously, "Are you so confident that you can take me down by yourself? You and the others are gone, but aren't there other people with special abilities patrolling the village? Isn't there still me?" Okay. Su was a little drunk. She clearly didn't notice them, but they said she had spotted them in advance. She couldn't deny the accusation now. She could only hold her waist with one hand and her stomach with the other. Following closely by 4 eyes, she walked to the edge of the water tank and sat down. She took a few breaths and said tiredly, "I'm a little tired. If you want to do something, do it quickly." The 3rd level wood-type mutant and the fat man with the gun looked at each other. Su was out of breath because of her huge belly. She was panting even when she was sitting. She looked easy to deal with. Then, the fat man sneered and said to the third-level wood-type mutant, "So it's so easy to capture the owner of Bafong Villa? If we had known it was so easy, why would we have released maggots everywhere? Go and inform the commander to take over Bafong Village tonight while none of the special forces are in Bafong Village today." Hello, hello, hello. Su couldn't help but gasp a few more times. She looked like a fragile daughter, and now she looked pale. Her long hair was casually pinned up with a hairpin she found. She saw the two men didn't even move their hands, and directly discussed letting Lu Yin take over Bafong Village, so she reminded them, "At least you have to fight with me, and then beat me to death, and then we can discuss the aftermath." The two men didn't move, looking at Su in confusion, not understanding why none of the special forces were in Bafong Village, and there were only a few useless superpowers in the entire Bafong Village. Su, the only one with a higher superpower level, looked like she would fall down at the snap of a finger, and she was still so big-bellied, but she still wanted to fight with them. Where did Su get the confidence to fight with them? "Okay, you don't want to fight? Then I'll start." Su rubbed her chest and took a few breaths. Before she finished her words, countless water droplets suddenly flew out from the turbid green rainwater in the water tank behind her. Without even saying hello, they flew towards the people standing on her left and right. The fat man yelled and shot at Su, then he fell to the ground with his head in his hands, avoiding this round of flying water droplets. The third-level wood-type mutant's reaction was a little slower. While he retreated repeatedly, several bloody holes were made on his body and shoulders by the sudden water droplets. But he was still a third-level wood-type mutant after all. Despite being injured, he activated his superpowers. The flowers, plants, and trees around Su began to grow wildly. When the third-level wood-type mutant knelt on the ground due to blood loss, several vines came towards Su like flying snakes. Good. Su was still sitting by the water tank and nodded with admiration. This was a bit like a strong confrontation. She waved her hand that was covering her belly, and several silver cold lights in the air quickly gathered and turned into several ice snakes, heading towards the two men on the left and right. The winding wooden vines were blocked by an ice wall before they reached Su. There were a few emerald green leaves growing on the dark green vines. The vines crawled along the ice wall condensed by Su. Finally, the ice wall surrounded Su and the water tank behind her. The vines then circled the ice wall several times, gradually closing in and trapping the ice wall. The ice snakes flew towards the third-level wood-type mutant and the fat man. One wrapped around the third-level wood-type mutant's neck, and the other went straight into his stomach. The fat man was shooting at Su's ice wall regardless of anything. As soon as he got up, an ice snake flew over, opened its icy mouth, and headed towards the fat man's face, then disappeared into the fat man's head. In an instant, the fat man's body turned white, and he still maintained the posture of getting up and shooting, frozen to the spot. At this time, Su was trapped by the vines. The ice wall around her turned into a bunch of sharp blades turned outward. In the blink of an eye, the thin ice blades scattered in all directions, and the vines around her were cut into pieces, with green branches and leaves flowing, and fell at Su's feet. The war has stopped, and the winner has been decided. Cough, cough, cough. The third-level wood-type mutant whose stomach was eaten through by an ice snake looked like he was wearing an ice scarf around his neck, and his body was full of blood holes pierced by water droplets. He knelt on the ground on his knees, coughing up bright red blood. The blood was very sticky and fell on the ice snake's tail that was still twisting in his abdomen. The red blood and the white ice formed a very sharp contrast. At this time, Su Sufang stood up, holding up her big belly, and walked step by step to the middle of the fat man and the third-level wood-type mutant. She glanced at the two of them, turned around and faced the third-level wood-type mutant side and asked, "You can reach the third level. This level is not easy to cultivate, and life here is not that difficult. So why are you doing this?"
No.
The third-level wood-type mutant felt cold and in pain, and his voice was trembling. His hands drooped weakly, and he felt that the blood in his body was frozen by the ice snake in his abdomen and could not flow. He opened his bloody mouth, smiled at Su Su with lifeless eyes, and continued, "Not everyone is willing to live in a melon field with no pursuits." He followed Lu Yin and served in the army for many years. What he always thought about was how to move to the next level. The end of the world has come. As an ambitious man with aspirations, he should make achievements and become a noble or a prime minister. That is what a man should do. Life here in Su Su is very good. He has no worries about food and clothing and does not have much living expenses. However, it is too peaceful and not suitable for passionate men. The third level wood-type mutant coughed again, and his throat seemed to be soaked in water, making gurgling sounds. His voice gradually became lighter, and he slowly said, "You and I are both at level 3. I just lost today, because I was careless. Next time you won't be so lucky." Unsure of what to do with the body of the third level wood-type mutant, Su Su turned around and glanced at the fat man who was frozen stiff behind him. Although the fat man's body was frozen to the point that he remained in the same shape and could not move, he was not dead yet. Perhaps he had more fat in his body and was more resistant to freezing. When he saw Su Su turning around, the fat man trembled and said, I think that life here is pretty good. Don't kill me. I want to stay here, safely stay. Really, I never thought of killing you from the beginning." Perhaps these two people had no intention of taking Su Su's life from the beginning. After all, Lu Yin still wanted her to give birth to Xiao AI, and wanted to control Xiao AI to manipulate her and Yi Yu, and even to take over the entire Bafang village. But in a fight between life and death, there must be no future troubles. To Su Su, killing one person is killing two people is also killing. She doesn't mind killing one more person. Besides, they are people who do great things. Today they can disregard human lives and release maggots to eat people just to restrain you. Tomorrow, they will be so cruel that they can slaughter all the old and young in the village. In the eyes of these people, human lives are just like ants, worthless. Su Su will also be like an ant. What's wrong with treating these two people? So Su Su shook her head, took 2 steps towards the fat man, and said kindly, "Look, your companions are all dead, and they died bravely and fearlessly, which is a pity. You have nothing and can only threaten pregnant women with a gun, so you should also die with your companions."
No.
The fat man uttered no 3 times in a row, and then his eyes widened as he looked directly at Su Su. Looking at Su Su's nonchalant and murderous attitude, a pink heart-shaped peach on her maternity skirt was dancing in the breeze. The last thought in the fat man's mind was that he couldn't believe it. He had already surrendered voluntarily, but Su Su still wanted to kill him. Such cruelty was not in line with her pure and weak image at all. Su Su, who originally had no plan to kill anyone today, stood between the 2 bodies after killing 2 people, thinking about how to deal with the 2 bodies. The bloody smell attracted several maggots, but the maggots were crawling in the green grass, and before they could crawl onto the bleeding third level wood-type mutant, they were eaten by a mutant chicken that suddenly jumped out. Therefore, the idea of relying on the mutant maggots to eat the 2 corpses was immediately rejected by Su Su. Under the relentless pursuit of Yi Yu and others, the mutant chickens in Bafang village had developed the mobility like a mobile force. They came and went without a trace. Wherever there were mutant maggots, there were mutant chickens. This is also the most important reason why the mutant maggots cannot be successfully raised in Bafang village. At this time, in the backyard of a villa building, Mei Xingnan, wearing a pink silk pajamas and a lace jacket, opened the door to the backyard. With a lazy expression, she leaned against the door, holding a cigarette between her slender fingers, took a puff, and looked at Su Su standing between the 2 corpses in a daze. She opened her red lips and asked, "Injured?"
No, not really.
Su Su turned around and looked at Mei Xingnan not far away, shrugged. "I was just thinking about how to deal with these 2 bodies. Why not just throw it into the ditch?" Mei Xingnan twisted her waist and glanced at Su Su coquettishly, as if she thought this was not a problem at all. She raised her hand and took another puff of her cigarette. Behind her, in the dimly lit room, there was a sound of mahjong being rubbed. Su Su frowned, took 2 steps towards Mei Xingnan, and asked, "Are you playing mahjong?" If ordinary people heard what Mei Xingnan said, they would be sufficiently alert, because there were mutated bushes planted in the trenches of Bafang village. But Mei Xingnan asked Su Su to throw the body into the trench. Doesn't it clearly show that she knows that there are species in the trench of Bafang village that can dispose of the bodies? Su Su couldn't help but smile. It made sense. Who was Mei Xingnan? She had only been in Bafang village for a few days, but she must have known everything about the village inside and out. It was not surprising that Mei Xingnan knew many things that people who had been staying in Bafang village didn't know. What else? Mei Xingnan rolled her eyes at Su Su. You don't let us entertain guests or play mahjong to pass the time, so what do you want us to do?
Oh.
Su Su nodded, thinking that this made sense. Just as she was about to say whether she should find something for Mei Xingnan and other women to do. For example, help the coolies with sewing and mending. Then she heard Mei Xingnan say, "Do you play mahjong? I won't. So, you want to come in and study?"
This.
Su Su thought for a moment, shook her head at Mei Xingnan and refused. "No. That thing gives me a headache." Mei Xingnan looked at Su Su with contempt as if she was looking at a good girl, then twisted her ace and went back to the house. Then, with a bang, she slammed the door to the backyard shut. Her expression seemed to say that Su Su couldn't even play mahjong and was so difficult to learn, and that they had absolutely nothing in common. I think in Bafang village, the only person who could be so disrespectful to Su Su is Mei Xingnan. Su Su stood there and smiled again. Then she held her waist, crossed the path between the two villas, and returned to the open space where the coolies ate. Along the way, the coolies greeted her respectfully. Su Su nodded in response and walked to Brother Abeo and Li Xiaoyu, who were cleaning up the rice and vegetable bowls. Su Su smiled at Li Xiaoyu with an expression that said, "I leave it all to you," then turned around, walked around the long table in front of her, and went to the villa where Su's father and mother lived. As soon as I walked in, I saw Su's mother and father sitting on either side of a table, looking at each other in silence while eating. When Su Su came in, Su's mother's stern face suddenly showed a hint of smile. She waved and put out the dishes and chopsticks that had been prepared long ago for Su Su. "Daughter, come and eat." "I have eaten." Su Su held on and walked slowly into the main hall. Even so, she smelled the aroma of the food and felt a little hungry, so she sat down, picked up the bowl and chopsticks handed to her by Su's mother, ate a few bites casually, and saw that Su's father had not spoken, so she asked, "Dad, are you going back to the villa to sleep at night?" "Not tonight. Abao and his friends got a small excavator from somewhere. I need to study it." "Pa, what's so good about studying excavators?" "I think you're just waiting for those vixens to come over." Su's mother followed up Su's father's words with a barrage of distortions. Su's father looked up, glared at Su's mother, then glanced at Su Su. He felt that he really didn't want to quarrel with Su's mother, a woman, in front of his daughter, so he put down his chopsticks, stood up, and walked out of the main room. Look at your father's attitude. No one believes him when he says he has nothing to hide. Mother Su was furious. She didn't chase him. She turned her grief and anger into appetite and ate 2 mouthfuls of rice fiercely. She complained to Su Su, "Why do you keep Mei Xingnan and those vixens around? They wear revealing clothes all day long and act so coquettishly, as if they are craving men. Why don't you drive them away quickly so that Bafang village can be peaceful again?"
Mom.
Su Su lowered her head to eat, and her mother kept nagging in her ear. She couldn't stand it anymore, so she said, "I've already told Mei Xingnan and the others that they are not allowed to have any ideas about my dad in the future." "Mom, Mei Xingnan is actually not as flirtatious as she appears to be. She just appears to be more flirtatious." "Nonsense. Mom is much more experienced in judging people than you are." After finishing her meal, Su's mother said to Su Su, "I will stay here tonight. If your dad doesn't leave, I won't leave either. I don't know what you and the others are going to do today, so you stay here and talk to Mom." "Okay, I'll accompany you." Su Su was very well behaved. Her mother asked her to stay here to accompany her, so she did. In fact, Su Su also understood her mother. Her mother and her father had been married for a lifetime. The reason why her father had never had any gossip was mainly because other women simply looked down on Sue's father. In addition, Sue's father was a bus driver and was not a rich and powerful man. On weekdays, which woman would be willing to pay for such a man? But now it is the end of the world. As the owner of Bafong Mountain Villa, his father is also quite prestigious in this small Bafong village. Occasionally, he got the attention of a few women, so Sue's mother's heart was naturally alarmed. In addition, Sue's father saw the scene of Mei Xingnan and several women surrounding Sue's father. It would be strange if Sue's mother could feel comfortable. All the beauty a woman once had was given to a man when he was young. When he got old, it was worthless. But men were different. Men became more valuable as they got older. How could a man like Sue's father not make Sue's mother feel a sense of crisis? After comforting Sue's mother for a long time, Su accompanied Sue's mother in the country villa in Bafong village for an afternoon and had dinner. After nightfall, Sue's father went out to tinker with his small excavator. Sue's mother followed him because she was afraid that Sue's father was lying and went to fool around with Mei Xingnan and the other vixens. Su stayed in the villa alone, stroking the baby in her belly, sitting in the main room, and watching the sky gradually darken. The starry sky is beautiful tonight, and the brilliant Milky Way meanders northward in the night. In Bafong village, the laborers have started to work, and the tranquility of life can be felt amid the hustle and bustle. In the distance, 1 or 2 faint sounds of firecrackers were heard, which were not quite clear. I wanted to listen carefully, but I could only hear the sound of the wind. Time passed peacefully in Bafong village. At 7:55 p.m., in the safe zone, in the trading house, another wave of maggots retreated. A tall and thin man in a black shirt was sitting in the hall with his eyes closed, as if he was performing some mysterious ritual. Next to the man, Li Ying and Wang Zijiao sat at the table, looking at the clock on the wall. Beside them and outside the trading house, there were many fully armed psychics and soldiers standing. Everything was quiet except for the maggots. Suddenly, Wang Zijiao broke the silence and said to Li Ying, "It's 7:59. Yi Yu and the others won't be here. Let's get started." "Okay." Li Ying lowered her eyes to hide the disappointment in them. If Yi Yu didn't come, they would have to take action today. The winner will be the king and the loser will be the bandit, and tonight is the only night to decide. To do big things, don't look ahead and behind, otherwise you will never accomplish anything. Then Wang Zijiao stood up. At the same time, the man in black, who was sitting cross-legged in the hall, also opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, the maggots surrounding the trading house raised their scarlet mouthparts, turned around and moved towards Lu Yin. Just behind the Apple Villa district, in the streets controlled by Lu Yin, in a dimly lit room, Lu Yin, wearing a military uniform, couldn't bear it anymore and stood up. He leaned on the table, bent over, and spit out a mouthful of dark red blood. In front of his table, there was already a row of psychics standing, and several of them were carrying guns, and they pulled several hostages in from outside the door. The one-eyed Lu Yin raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his wrist. The eagle on his shoulder turned its eagle eyes and looked at the hostages who were brought in, including Xie's mother, Xie Qingyan, Fei Fei, and a water-based mutant. One of the psychics in the row spoke up and said, "Commander, the traitor Wang Zijiao has already started to act. It's time for him to move." Lu Yin's face was grim. He straightened his back and walked forward from behind the table. "If he doesn't move, he will die in my hands sooner or later. Although there are a lot of supplies in the trading house, they can't last long. Given Wang Zijiao's character, he will not abandon the survivors. If Wang Zijiao has something to eat, those survivors who have no strengths will have something to eat." Therefore, Lu Yin didn't need to investigate deliberately to know that the supplies in Wang Zijiao's hands were almost finished. Although the psychic who could control mutant beasts in Wang Zijiao's hands was slightly more capable than Lu Yin, he could only send out 2 or 3 people at a time. Wang Zijiao was unwilling to give up so many trapped survivors. Apart from sending people out for help, the supplies he found were not enough to feed so many people. compared with the situation on Wang Zijiao's side, Lu Yin seemed much more decisive and efficient. As early as the beginning of the sudden change in the situation, Lu Yin assigned all the survivors in his hands to Wang Zijiao's side for care. He had 5,000 ordinary soldiers and more than 20 people with special powers. For Lu Yin, ordinary soldiers can't play a big role in helping now. His focus is only on how to cultivate people with special powers. The supplies in his hands are first distributed to people with special powers. Those that the people with special powers don't want are then distributed to ordinary soldiers. He himself understood that in the current situation, ordinary soldiers were not willing to work for him, so Lu Yin valued the lives of ordinary soldiers less and less. This time, he planned to use ordinary soldiers as cover to let him leave the encirclement surrounded by the maggot tide. Originally, the tide of maggots near the encirclement was just a deliberate enclosure created by Lu Yin for defensive purposes. At that time, he and Wang Zijiao had not yet fallen out. Later, because he saw through Li Ying's uncontrollable nature, he was a little wary of Wang Zijiao. Later, Wang Zijiao had a psychic who could control mutant beasts. The psychic's level was comparable to Lu Yin's. He quickly controlled the mutant maggots and surrounded Lu Yin, leaving him in a dilemma. Lu Yin and Wang Zijiao officially broke up at this point, and the Xiangqing safety zone, which was originally small in the past, has now become a four-way confrontation. The situation had forced Lu Yin to the point where he had to leave. Last time, the eagle he left outside was shot by Yi Yu's men, and his wounds had never healed fully. Later, the maggots driven by the psychic in Wang Zijiao's hands put him under considerable pressure, so Lu Yin forcibly increased his psychic level, causing his body to be overloaded. If I don't leave soon, I'm afraid I'll be trapped here and die sooner or later. And tonight is the best time for Lu Yin to break out. The eagle eye on his shoulder stared at Mother Xie with a cold light. Lu Yin stepped forward and looked at the haggard and terrified expression on Mother Xie's face. He stretched out his hand, which was covered with a black leather glove, and grabbed Mother Xie's chin. He said slowly, "Li Ying thinks she is the smartest person in the world, but she is still just a woman. She thought she would force me out from the west and take Su Su's Bafang village to make a comeback? But she didn't expect that I would never take this path. Su Su is a fallback, and it's not time to take her down yet. Just let them develop for a while. I have planted so many people in Bafang village, and it takes time to gain their trust. So you can guess the path I am going to take now? Please let us go, please let us go." Xie's mother's thin face was full of tears. Looking at Lu Yin, she felt a chill on her spine for no reason. She shook her head and backed away. However, behind her, there were two pistols pointed at her back. Xie's mother's back straightened unconsciously, and she stood still, not daring to speak again. "TSK, TSK, TSK, TSK. Lu Yin smiled sinisterly, stretched out a finger, and gestured to Xie's mother to silence her. "Don't be afraid. I won't do anything to you. I just want you and your son to do me a small favor." Yes, a small favor. It was really just a small favor, just waiting for Xie Yaoshi to come and rescue Xie's mother and Xie Qingyan, and helping him kill some maggots and stop Wang Zijiao and Li Ying's pursuers. After saying that, Lu Yin glanced at Xie Qingyan, who was hiding behind Xie's mother timidly and didn't dare to say a word, and snorted with some contempt. Yes, although Xie Qingyan was a little timid, he was still a water-based psychic after all. The funny thing was that Xie Qingyan himself didn't even know that he was a water-based psychic. After taking another look at Fei Fei, who had a wooden face, a look of satisfaction appeared in Lu Yin's one eye. A very strong wood-type mutant might not be very obedient at the beginning, but taming a person is no different from taming a mutant beast. After taming it a few times, it will be very obedient. Then Lu Yin checked the rest of the people one by one. The hostages in his hands were all of great use to him. Those useless hostages had long been thrown by Lu Yin into some corner to feed the maggots. Everything was deployed properly. The main force was used to contain Wang Zijiao and Li Ying. Another group of 15 psychics were fully armed and took several hostages. When Wang Zijiao launched an attack on the street, They abandoned the other ordinary soldiers who were resisting hard, went into battle lightly, walked through a secluded underground passage in the dark, and headed towards Xiaoyaoshi. It was less than 6 o'clock in the morning of the second day. The sky was already gray and white. Bafong village was a 40-minute drive from the safe zone. King Kong, who was ambushing in the bushes, said to Yi Yu, who was lying beside him. He came out. He squatted for an afternoon and a night. This Lu Yin can really hold out.
He didn't come out until now.
Yi Yu was wearing an iron helmet with a grass ring on it. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead. When he heard King Kong's words, he stretched out his hand, and the scholar next to him handed him a telescope. He then continued King Kong's words. The brothers who monitor the safety zone said that Wang Zijiao and Liang led people to rush into Lu Yin's safety zone last night. They fought all night and killed many soldiers. This morning, a group of people took 3 military trucks and broke out of the safety zone, but they're not sure whether Lu Yin is in it. Here it comes. Yi Yu held up a telescope and looked through it. A military truck was coming quickly on the national highway. A large group of people were standing or sitting on the truck. Everyone was wearing a military uniform and their faces were covered in blood. He raised one hand and waited for the truck to get closer. But he suddenly turned his head and asked the scholar, "You said 3? "Yes, 3. But there is only one military truck here. Let's quickly ask the other 2 roads to see if there are any military trucks coming over there as well." Hearing this, the scholar quickly lowered his head and pressed the Special Forces watch in his hand. After only 10 seconds, he looked up and replied, "Yibeopi, there is a military truck coming on each road, and the time is not in order. The brothers monitoring the safe zone can't be sure which car Lu Yin is in. Depend on." Yi Yu, who was lying in the grass, couldn't help but curse. There were only 3 roads from the west of the safe zone that would pass by Bafong village, and only these 3 roads could go south and north. When Lu Yin escaped, he drove 3 military trucks, but they ran in 3 different routes. No one knew which military truck he would hide in. No matter what, I've overturned all 3 cars. Yi Yu pounded the grass, gave an order, lay down in the grass, swung his arm, and threw a fireball, which landed right on the oncoming military truck, creating a large spark. The military truck seemed to be frightened, and its front end tilted, and the car rushed into the woods on the side. The soldiers on the truck quickly raised their guns and fired. Not caring where Yi Yu and the others were hiding, they just kept shooting. For a moment, superpowers and bullets were flying in this world. At the same time, Su was awakened by the noise downstairs. She walked out of the bedroom on the 2nd floor and wanted to take a hot bath. She rested in this villa yesterday. Because she had no change of clothes, she did not take a shower last night. This morning, Li Xiuyu, who came with Brother Abeo to deliver food, brought her clothes to her, so Su had to wait until early in the morning to take a shower. This country villa has 2 floors. There is a bathroom on the 1st floor with a shower and an electric water heater. There is a bathroom on the 2nd floor, but there is nothing else except a squat toilet. The bathroom on the 1st floor was right opposite the main room. At this time, there were a lot of people in the main room, coming and going to chat with Su's father and mother, ask questions, and borrow the bathroom. It was very inconvenient. The key point was that the bathroom had a window. I don't know what the owner was thinking. The window was made of transparent glass with a gauze-like curtain hung on the glass. If someone went around to the yard, they could see the shadow of a person projected on the curtain without opening the window or pulling open the curtain. So if Su wanted to take a hot bath, she had to prepare 2 buckets for herself on the 2nd floor, plug in a quick heater, heat a bucket of water first, and then add cold water to it so that she could take a hot bath. Of course, it is also possible to use Yi Yu to replace hot water, but at this moment, I don't know whether Yi Yu has done it with Lu Yin or not. Su is just taking a shower, so there is no need to wait for Yi Yu to come back to give her hot water. Originally, Su's father thought that after the rough outline of the wall was almost completed in the next few days, he would help Su's mother, who insisted on staying here to monitor him, and Su, who was keeping her company, to install an electric water heater on the 2nd floor. However, Su thought that in a few days, Sue's mother might feel that Sue's father's style was fine, and they would still move to Bafong Villa, so he would not bother with all this. Fortunately, it is convenient for Sue to take a bath. As long as the water is heated, she can control the hot water like a water snake, entangled with the cold water and dance into a stream, mix with warm water to form a water snake. Then she doesn't have to do it herself. She can just control the water snake to slide around her body, and the bath will be ready. Washing hair was even more convenient. After taking a shower, Sue put her clothes back on, with the goal of not getting her clothes wet. She practiced the fine manipulation of her supernatural powers, standing in the toilet with her clothes on, controlling the water to wash her hair. When Yiyu came in, he saw Sue with a bulging belly, wearing a maternity nightgown and slippers, with her long hair fluttering in the wind, and a transparent water snake slithering through her hair. So Yiyu leaned against the door, glanced at Sue's chest, and said with a gangster-like smile, "Come on, show me how to take a bath with your clothes on." Sue glanced at Yiyu, moved her fingers, and her long hair fell down. The water snake, carrying grease and dandruff, went back into the bucket. She ignored Yiyu, but just held her waist and walked out of the bathroom door. When she reached the door, Yiyu stretched out his hand and picked up Sue horizontally. Sue asked, "Kill him?" "No, I didn't find where Lu Yin is." Upon hearing this, Yiyu looked a little frustrated. He ordered his men to overturn all the military checkpoints on the 3 roads. This was effortless, but he could not find Lu Yin among the captives. Not only was he not found among the captives, but he was not even found among the corpses on the ground. So they had no choice but to drag all the captives back to Bafong village, intending to interrogate them one by one and find out Lu Yin's whereabouts. By the way, I found a few survivors among those military cards. One of them is a girl who I said was your college classmate. She lived in the same dormitory with you in college. Who is it?
Shushu.
Her college roommates were Bai Luoluo, Lianxin, and Li Xiaoyu. Bai Luoluo was dead, and Li Xiaoyu was in Bafong village, so there was only one left. She said her name was Lianxin. I brought her back, but she was taken away by Li Xiaoyu. Where did Li Xiaoyu take Lianxin? Sue struggled and wanted to jump out of Yiyu's arms. She really wanted to go out and question Li Xiaoyu. What kind of person is this Lianxin? Hasn't Li Xiaoyu suffered enough from Lianxin before? Yiyu did not let Sue down. He carried Sue and her son back to the bedroom and said, "Don't worry. How can we take just anyone back to Bafong Villa? Aren't you afraid that they are spies?" Li Xiaoyu took Lianxin to another villa. The survivors who came back with the military card this time will be taken care of together. Recently, Yiyu likes to hold Sue horizontally like this more and more. In his words, this is like holding 2 women at the same time, which is great. Sue couldn't win the argument with him, so she just let him do what he wanted. She also felt relieved after hearing that Li Xiaoyu did things with some propriety. She thought about going with Yiyu to see what was happening when he was interrogating Lianxin. At that time, there was a maggot plague in the Apple Villa district. All the survivors from Xie Qingyan's side who were able to escape from the Apple Villa district ran away, and those who could not escape had already become food for the maggots. This Lianxin was found in Lu Yin's military card. Although he was captured by Yiyu as a weakling, who knows whether Lianxin is loyal or treacherous? Sue was anxious because she was afraid that Li Xiaoyu didn't know right from wrong. But after hearing what Yiyu said, Sue felt relieved and said to Yiyu, "As soon as you left with your men yesterday, 2 people who claimed to be Lu Yin came to hold me hostage. I think some of Brother Pai's words should not be listened to. Although he is a gang leader, he is also a gang leader in a civilized society. Brother Pai's approach is to focus on how to prepare more escape routes for yourself, regardless of whether spies exist or not. This is indeed effective in a civilized society, but today's society has been destroyed to the point where there is no civilization or order at all. Spies are not bound by so many rules and regulations, and they will take action when the opportunity comes. Therefore, escape routes must be prepared, and spies must be caught. You were held hostage yesterday?" Yiyu tensed up all his muscles when he heard this. He touched Su all over and asked nervously, "Are you injured anywhere? Let me see. Take off your clothes."
Stop it.
Su pushed Yu and slapped him. She laughed twice, adjusted her attitude, and said to Yu, "Do you understand what I said to you? What's the meaning?" Yu felt it was boring not to let him make a fuss. He turned around and lay down beside Su's feet. He stretched out his hands to hold one of Su's feet and began to rub her. After a while, Yu saw that Su didn't say anything but just stared at him with anger in her eyes. Yu thought about it, put Su's foot on his chest, and said, "You want me to solve this for you? Okay, I'll arrange it tomorrow. All the people in Bafong village will be arrested one by one in this small dark room and locked up for trial. They won't be released until they are proven innocent. You are creating a terrifying atmosphere in Bafong village." Su kicked Yu hard and said irritably, "If an innocent person is interrogated by your methods, he will no longer be innocent even if he is innocent. Then the whole Bafong village will be in a panic. Is that fun?" Su felt that Brother Pai and Yi were at two completely different extremes in how they dealt with the spies in Bafong village. One advocated ignoring them, while the other advocated a thorough investigation. Both of them seemed a bit unreliable. But if you ask Su, she doesn't know what to do. The word spy is not written on the spy's face. Who knows how many spies are still in Bafong village? Or how many people are becoming spies? Or how many spies are on the way, preparing to infiltrate? For a moment, Su thought about these messy things and felt a little irritated. Now that she was pregnant with Xiao AI, her brain was not enough. She thought so hard that her head hurt. She simply stopped thinking about it and then frowned and asked Yu, "Is Lu Yin still in the safe zone?" "I don't know. The people monitoring the safe zone said that Li Ying and Wang Zijiao have successfully entered the blocks where Lu Yin is staying and have begun to collect prisoners and receive supplies. This time, Yu and others also captured some prisoners. The soldiers on the 3 military trucks hardly put up any resistance, so Yu captured a lot of prisoners this time. Together with the survivors such as Li Anxin, there were a total of soldiers from 2 large military trucks. Earlier, after capturing the captives outside Bafong village, Yu and the others asked a few questions and found out that long before Li Ying and Wang Zijiao rushed in, Lu Yin had ordered them to hold off the enemy if they could, and if they couldn't, they should follow Li Ying and Wang Zijiao's wishes and run west. Su was lying on the bed, listening to what Yu said, frowning slightly, and said, "Didn't Li Ying say that Lu Yin still has Xie Qingyan and Xie's mother in his hands? I guess Lu Yin is going in the direction of Xie Yaoshi." The place where Xie Yaoshi was located was right in the center of the maggot tide. In Li Ying's opinion, Lu Yin would never be able to enter the area where the maggot tide was most rampant. He was now seriously injured, and it was difficult for him to drive the eagle on his shoulder, let alone control the maggot tide. So Li Ying thought that if Lu Yin wanted to run, he would only run to the west where there were the least maggots. She and Wang Zijiao led their men and divided their troops into 3 groups to attack the blocks occupied by Lu Yin from the east, south, and north directions, with the intention of forcing Lu Yin to run west. As a result, Lu Yin did not come west to Su and Yu to die, but went to Xie Yaoshi instead. Now I just hope that Xie Yaoshi won't be controlled by Lu Yin again because of his mother and Xie Qingyan. If a master like Xie Yaoshi falls into Lu Yin's hands, then Lu Yin will be in real trouble. Although it was morning and she had just woken up from a night's sleep, her belly was big and she felt tired easily. She fell on the bed and wanted to sleep. So she glanced at Yu, who was lying at her feet and rubbing her feet. She shrank her feet that were swollen like big buns, propped up her elbows, sat up with difficulty, and said to Yu, "You are also tired all night. Stop rubbing and take a nap. Then I'll close my eyes for a while. What are you going to do?" Yu smiled, squinted his eyes, rolled around on the bed for a few times, climbed onto the pillow where Su had slept, closed his eyes, and fell asleep immediately. Su shook her head, pulled the thin quilt on the bed, covered Yu's back with it, got up, walked out of the bedroom, and went downstairs. At this time, Su's mother had come back from outside with breakfast. The people who had come to the main room to discuss things with Sue's father had already left in twos and threes. Sue's father also went to inspect the place where the trench was being dug in Bafong village. Mother Sue asked Su to sit down and eat breakfast. She also left a portion for Yu. Then she talked to Su about Mei Shengnan and the other women. You haven't seen that the ratio of men to women in Bafong village is so small. Those vixens walk around in the yard in pajamas every day. Isn't this clearly seducing men? Su, it's time to take care of these women. Oh, Mom, I'll let Li Xiuyu handle this matter, so don't interfere. Su sat at the small square table, eating breakfast while dealing with her mother. She knew that a neighborhood auntie like her mother probably couldn't hold back her desire to find trouble with Mei Xingnan and the others, so Su naturally wouldn't let her mother care about Mei Xingnan and the others. She has so many people under her control now. After looking around, among all the women, only Li Xiuyu has a relatively clear and fair mind. Instead of letting Li Xiuyu get closer and closer to Li Anxin, it is better to find something for Li Xiuyu to do, and let Li Xiuyu take care of Mei Xingnan and the others. Su thought about finding a few washing machines and setting up a laundry room so that Mei Xingnan and the others could help the laborers on the construction site wash and dry clothes. This is an easy thing to do, and Mei Xingnan and the others don't have to wash it by hand. At that moment, thinking about this, Su finished the breakfast in the bowl in a few bites, left her mother, who was chattering about Mei Shengnan and those vixens, and went out with her belly full to look for Li Xiuyu. It just so happened that Li Xiuyu was sitting under the big locust tree at the entrance of the village, staring blankly ahead. No one knew what she was thinking about. There was no one else in front of her, but she was looking intently. She was wearing overalls, a white t-shirt, and a ponytail, and looked like an ordinary college student. Su didn't want to disturb her at this time, so she had to stop and stand aside to watch. Then she saw a small stone fell next to Li Xiuyu's canvas shoes. Li Xiuyu raised her head and saw the scholar standing on the roof of the villa opposite, waving at her in a friendly manner. Li Xiuyu also smiled, raised her hand and waved at the scholar, then turned her head and saw Su standing by and watching. Li Xiuyu pursed her lips in embarrassment, feeling like she was caught in bed by Su, so she hurriedly asked Su, you got up? Do you have something for me to do? Well, there's something. Su supported her waist, held her big belly, and walked towards Li Xiuyu, slightly panting. Before she could talk about setting up a laundry room for Mei Shengnan, Li Xiuyu stood up and quickly expressed her opinion. Su, I know what you want to say, and Xian, I am not soft-hearted. I still haven't forgotten every word of what she said to me. Don't worry, I won't be that confused.
Oh.
Su was stunned for a moment. Then she remembered that she had actually forgotten about Li Anxin. After Yu mentioned this person, she seemed to be worried about Li Anxin for a while, but then she forgot about Li Anxin. What kind of memory is she having now? Su reacted immediately and said to Li Xiuyu, you should know it in your heart. You have been her relative for so many years, so you know what kind of person Li Anxin is. People's hearts are not as good as they used to be in the last days. Don't say too much when you talk to Li Anxin. If there is a chance, I think you should let Li Anxin leave here and go to Chuncheng or somewhere else to make a living. Su's place would not welcome people like Li Anxin. Although Li Anxin was not a wicked person who committed murder and arson, she had a grudge against Su. She had once condemned Su and Li Xiuyu with a righteous look on her face. Su was narrow-minded, and there was no way for her to resolve the grudge with Li Anxin. The most important thing is that Li Anxin was found on Liu Yin's military card, which made Su very concerned. Li Xiuyu had a slight embarrassment on her face, but she still nodded and assured Su. Okay, after Yu has finished interrogating her and confirmed that there is no problem, I will let her go immediately. The embarrassment on her face was because of the look on Li Anxin's face she had just seen, but it was truly beyond words to describe. Although Li Anxin was not a beauty in the past, she was youthful, pretty, lively, and enthusiastic, and possessed all the good qualities that a college student should have. Li Xiuyu didn't know what Li Anxin had encountered during the period of her evolution. Anyway, When she looked at Li Xiuyu just now, there were blue and red marks all over the exposed parts of her body, and her hair was messy, as if it had been cut as if by a teasing, longer here and shorter there, and it was in no shape. The clothes on her body had not been washed for many days, and she was not wearing any underwear under her skirt. The expression on her face also had a hint of worldly air, and the smell on her body was even worse, as if it was all the tadpole smell of a man. Seeing Li Anxin like this, Li Xiaoyu felt a trace of sympathy. The reason why she was sitting here in a trance was that she wanted to ask Su Su to keep Li Anxin and settle her down. But Su Su didn't wait for her to beg and showed a very firm attitude, leaving Li Xiuyu no chance to even speak. It is the end of the world now. Which woman out there is not living in dire straits? Since Li Anxin chose Xie Qingyan in the first place, she must be responsible for her actions. Who can she blame for being reduced to this state today? Li Xiaoyu herself understood that from the very beginning, she and Li Anxin chose two teams, and their life experiences had been different since then. Su Su had given Li Anxin and others a chance. As long as Li Anxin and others were willing to help Su's father build the wall and exchange their labor for food, Su Su would have taken Li Anxin and others in. But Li Anxin's choice at that time was to point at Su Su and curse her, calling Su Su a cold-blooded and ruthless executioner. So now if Su Su is asked to take Li Anxin in, it would be because she has a good heart. If she doesn't, no one can say that it is Su Su's fault. Oh, by the way, there is one more thing I almost forgot. Seeing that Li Xiuyu agreed to send Li Anxin away, Su Su remembered something and said to Li Xiuyu, "Go back and find a few people to set up a laundry room for Mei Xingnan and the other women, and let them be responsible for washing the coolies' clothes." "Okay, I'll do it right away." Li Xiaoyu nodded and agreed. Just as Su Su had instructed Li Xiuyu about finding a washing machine and setting up a laundry room, another gangster came to report to Su Su that Li Ying had arrived. "This guy just went through a big battle last night, didn't he take a rest?" Su Su and Li Xiaoyu stood in the open space at the entrance of the village. The crown of the big locust tree above their heads blocked some of the sunlight above their heads. Su Su stood there and let the young and dangerous man lead Li Ying in through the iron gate at the entrance of the village. She found a big rock under the tree and sat there waiting for Li Ying. When Li Ying walked up to Su Su alone, wearing a tight army green skirt, in the bright sunshine, Li Xiaoyu had already turned around and called a few gangsters to follow her in the car to find a washing machine. "You are such a big village chief, but you are allowed to sit on this big rock alone?" Li Ying came over and started to tease Su Su from a distance. Su Su looked over and saw that although Li Ying's eyes were tired, she was not injured. It seemed that the attack on Lu Yin last night was quite easy. So she smiled and said, "Some people call me the village chief, and some people call me the owner of the manor. No matter whether it is the village chief or the owner of the manor, they are still not as good as you, the deputy captain, who is decisive and cautious in killing. That's because you like to live a peaceful life like this, and don't like fighting and killing to strive for the top. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the chance to jump around today." Li Ying smiled amiably, stood in front of Su Su, bent down, put several large plastic bags in her hands at Su Su's feet, found a smaller stone, sat down opposite Su Su, and said, "These are all baby clothes we found. They are not worth much. I hope you like them. Just consider it as a thank you for your man's help last night. You're welcome." Lu Yin was not in the 3 cars that escaped last night. While chatting and laughing, Su Su waved her hand, and the smile on her face faded a little. Once Lu Yin was driven away, Li Ying took over. She had thousands of Lu Yin's former captives in her hands. Together with the survivors, there were at least tens of thousands of people. How could Su Su believe that such a deep-minded person who had worked hard to climb to this position would sincerely offer her something to thank her? Sure enough, when Li Ying heard Su Su say this, her expression became much more serious. "I think he went to Xie Yaoshi." Lu Yin holds 2 relatives of Xie Yaoshi in his hands. "Su Su, Xie Yaoshi is not easy to deal with. We must take the initiative first. Strike first and gain the upper hand?" Su Su snorted, her expression somewhat cold, and glanced at Li Ying again. She changed her sitting position on the big rock and said, You're striking first again. Liang, do you know how many people died last night because of your words, strike first? That's right. Lu Yin deserved to be killed. If Liang didn't take the initiative, Lu Yin would have taken the initiative sooner or later. But just because Yi Yu overturned Lu Yin's 3 military trucks and deserters last night, did Liang think that Su Su was in cahoots with her from then on? As for we must strike first. Liang wants to get to the top. She wants to swallow up Lu Yin's soldiers, then swallow up Xie Yaoshi, and also wants to pull Su Su and Yi Yu as assistants. It's a really beautiful idea. But Liang was not annoyed. She still looked at Su Su with a smile and said softly, when doing big things, people will die. Now we are in the same boat. If Lu Yin is not eliminated and Xie Yaoshi helps us, you and I will be in danger. This is indeed true. Lu Yin, because of Su Su's love, once he gained power, he would either swallow up Su Su and Yi Yu, or kill the 2 traitors Wang Zijiao and Liang. Now Liang and Su Su are indeed in the same boat. Whether Su Su admits it or not, this is the fact. She stood up, holding her waist, and took 2 steps to the edge of the shade. The sun was shining brightly in front of her, so bright that it made people feel hot. Mei Xingnan was wearing a pink lace pajamas and holding a basin of water in her hand. She poured it into the yard and glanced at Su Su, who was separated by a large open space. When she saw Liang, she was stunned for a moment, and then she twisted her hips and went back before Liang noticed her. Liang still noticed that Su Su's Bafang village actually accepted such a person. Mei Xingnan's dress showed that she was not a decent woman. She snorted with contempt, and seeing that Su Su had his back to her and remained silent, she stood up, smiled, and clapped her hands, saying, "This man, if he survives in the end times, he will never have a peaceful life. If you don't kill me today, I will swallow you up tomorrow. No one can believe it. If you don't kill Xie Yaoshi today, do you want to wait for Xie Yaoshi to grow stronger and be led by Lu Yin to kill you?" Liang had stayed in the Apple Villa district for some time and had a rough understanding of Xie Yaoshi's team. She used to have a good relationship with Su Su's team, but times had changed and people's identities and positions were different. It was time not to think about the revolutionary friendship they once had. Being hesitant and fussy was just a woman's kindness. Su Su turned around and looked at Liang for a long time. Suddenly, she laughed and sneered. "You seem to be a smart person. How come you feel like you are on top of the world now that you have more than 10,000 people under you? You are too aggressive and don't even give Wang Zijiao a break. With these 10,000 people, I want to see how long you can keep messing around and how long Wang Zijiao can tolerate you." Wang Zijiao fought a bloody battle last night and finally took over several large warehouses of Lu Yin. Today, Liang was thinking about plotting against Xie Yaoshi. What else could this be? Perhaps Liang was thinking that the supplies in hand were always stretched to feed more than 10,000 people. Taking this opportunity, she could defeat Xie Yaoshi, who had not yet connected with Lu Yin, swallow up Xie Yaoshi's superpowers, and take over Xie Yaoshi's supplies. Then, she could control the tide of maggots in the safe zone and form a new safe zone. But according to Li Ying's development model, she may not be content after taking down Xie Yaoshi. According to her personality, I am afraid that she can only feed and grow herself by constantly annexing others. Is this kind of development healthy? In fact, it can't be said to be unhealthy. After all, in ancient times, when warlords were fighting for power, most countries also fought for resources through constant wars.
Su Su didn't want to be led by Liang.
It was true that she wanted to kill Lu Yin, but she didn't want Liang to use her as a gun under the pretext of killing Lu Yin, and she didn't want to help Liang get to the top. The two could not reach an agreement, and Liang did not force them. She just said that there was a long time to come, and the matter could be planned slowly. Then she smiled and said goodbye to Su Su, and turned back to her own territory. At present, Lu Yin's whereabouts were unknown, and the insider on Xie Yaoshi's side had not yet informed Liang of Xie Yaoshi's unusual movements. So she was not in a hurry to drag Su Su into the water. Anyway, the plan had been made when the time came, and Liang did not believe that Su Su would let Lu Yin go easily. So Liang calmed down and returned to Wang Zijiao to deal with the maggot tide and organize the people with special abilities. Wang Zijiao insisted on keeping ordinary people, so Liang also wanted to put these ordinary people to good use and not let them become parasites. She followed the example of Su Su. Ordinary women had to use their bodies to comfort the men fighting outside for free. They were responsible for washing clothes, cooking, and cleaning the place for the elderly and children. The young and strong ordinary men had to pull up barbed wire to enclose the safe zone. 2 days passed peacefully. Li Xiaoyu found dozens of washing machines and, together with Brother Abeo and a few others, found a villa below Bafang Villa. After some tinkering, they turned the upstairs and downstairs into a laundry room. They also connected a water pipe from Bafang Villa so that clean water was always available in the laundry room. Mei Xingnan and others were assigned to be in charge of the laundry work in Bafang Village from then on. All the laborers in Bafang Village could put the clothes into a bucket, write their names on the bucket, and send the bucket full of clothes to the laundry room so that Mei Xingnan and others could wash them in the washing machine, and then everyone could take the clothes back to dry them by themselves. This is not a tiring task. You just have to bend down to put the clothes into the washing machine, turn the button on the washing machine, wait for the washing machine to finish washing, and then take the clothes out and put them in the bucket. This is very consistent with the lazy and gluttonous character of Mei Xingnan and other women. It was so easy that Zhou Xiaolin and others became more and more disgusted with Mei Xingnan and her group of vixens. Except for Li Xiaoyu, who handled things impartially, no one else who came into contact with Mei Xingnan and her group of women on a daily basis liked Mei Xingnan. Everyone's opinions about Mei Xingnan and the other women were gathered together, and some of them were heard by Su Su through various channels. However, Su Su, who seemed normal and sensible on weekdays, was particularly tolerant when it came to Mei Xingnan. She just let Mei Xingnan do whatever she wanted, except for receiving customers. In the afternoon, Zhou Xiaolin brought Qinyu to complain again, saying that Mei Xingnan and her gang of vixens were washing clothes in the laundry room in their pajamas. The water wet their lace pajamas, and people could see that they were not wearing any underwear inside. This happened in broad daylight, which was really not decent. Su Su felt a headache after hearing this. She sent Zhou Xiaolin away and planned to go see Mei Xingnan. However, she had just walked out of the villa where Su's father and mother lived and saw Chu Xian and Brother Pai walking towards them. Looking at Chu Xian's attitude, he was begging for help and was about to kneel down to Brother Pai. Seeing Su Su from a distance, Chu Xian quickly left Brother Pai behind and ran to Su Su. He bowed to her with both hands and said with a sad face, "Su Su, please save me. We are such a good friend. How can you be so cruel and deliberately cut off my food supply? You can't do this, Su Su, Sister Su." Su Su ignored Chu Xian, walked around Chu Xian who was jogging up, and walked towards a car parked on the side with her big belly. Brother Pai on the opposite side had a happy smile on his face. Chu Xian quickly turned around and jogged to catch up with Su Su, crying falsely, Sister Su, Miss Su, you are my dearest sister. I have hundreds of superpowers and thousands of ordinary people who are about to starve to death in the maggot pile. You have chickens running all over the village.
Kill a few of them for me.
I will be very grateful. Why would I kill chickens? Su Su looked at Chu Xian with a look of Buddha, has mercy on me. She stopped and turned to look at Chu Xian. If my mother's treasure is stolen one day, I will rely on these chickens to feed my family. I won't kill them. I want to keep them for eggs, and then I can start a chicken farm. Hearing this, Chu Xian was stunned, and then he realized that Su Su was mocking him. So Chu Xian's face was full of grief and indignation. He straightened his back, chest heaving, and said, Who is so bold as to dare to steal the treasure of my goddess Su Su? If I meet her, I will definitely not let her go. Some time ago, we caught a few thieves in our villa. Weren't they sent by you? Brother Pai came up from behind Chu Xian with a stifled smile on his face and said to Chu Xian, a few days ago, we returned these thieves to you. At that time, you had an expression on your face that said, how could I be so careless and exposed? Now, you look like you don't recognize these thieves anymore. This. Chu Xian's expression was strange for a while, and then quickly returned to normal. He said, "These thieves must have slandered me. I, Chu Xian, have always been upright. How could I do such a sneaky thing? Su, you must not be instigated by the villains and destroy more than 1,000 lives on my side. You are such a boring person." Su looked at Chu Xian's sincere expression, which was more sincere than pearls, and felt angry. What was the point of reasoning with such a scoundrel? Anyway, Chu Xian refused to admit that he had sent people to Bafang Villa to steal the mutant soil. What could Su do to him? Now those stupid thieves were returned to Chu Xian, and Su could not find any witnesses. She turned around, with an angry face, and sat in the passenger seat of the car in front of her. At the same time, she said to Brother Pai, "Brother Pai, my belly is big, it's not convenient for me to drive. Can you take me to Xia Meixingnan's place?" "Okay, I'll take you there." Brother Pai smiled and got into the driver's seat. Before he could sit down, Chu Xian, who was as sticky as a sticky candy, opened the car door and sat directly in the back seat, muttering non-stop, Su, it's really not easy for me to come out this time. There are still thousands of people I left in the maggots waiting for me to take food back. Su, I beg you, this is all my fault. I'm a rascal. I shouldn't have thought about your mother's mutated soil. Just sell me a few. We haven't eaten meat for a long time. I miss eating meat so much. I want to eat meat. So annoying. In the started car, Su sat in the passenger seat in front of Lu Yin and picked her ears. She became a little impatient with Chu Xian's magic sound piercing her brain. She turned around, glanced at Chu Xian and said, "Don't nag. This matter ends here. We didn't have much friendship to begin with, and after something like this, we have even less friendship to speak of. Don't call me elder sister or younger brother. If we really talk about age, I should call you uncle. So, 20 ordinary crystal cores for a pound of frozen chicken, 40 ordinary crystal cores for a pound of cured chicken, and there are also fried chicken, New Orleans grilled wings, etc., which are sold separately.
If you want to buy it.
If you don't want to buy, just go back to where you came from.
Buy.
Don't save crystal cores for Uncle. Uncle has plenty of crystal cores." Chu Xian nodded quickly and agreed. He had more than 200 psychics under his command, and they were now doing very well in the maggot tide. They had an inordinate number of crystal cores and enough food, vegetables, and clean water. The only problem was that there was no meat. Without meat, people would feel a dull taste in their mouths and would not be able to muster the energy to do anything. Normally, if someone steals something from someone else and is caught, they would be too embarrassed to go to Su's place again. But not Chu Xian. For Chu Xian, even though he failed to steal and was caught, this did not affect his intention to make friends with Su and Yu at all. He even put on exaggerated acting skills and came to Su's place to buy chicken. He was so shameless. Speaking of being hypocritical, Chu Xian, the Qiaoxi you left with me has given birth to her child. Isn't it time to take her back? In the passenger seat, Su, who didn't want to argue with Chu Xian anymore, talked about this most important topic. It was said that Qiaoxi had been soaking in the water for so many days and finally came out today, but he looked like he would fall down at the slightest breeze. Su was really afraid that Qiaoxi was almost dying from the exhaustion. If Qiaoxi tortured herself, then it would not be Su's business if she died. However, Chu Xian left Qiaoxi in her Bafang village. If Qiaoxi died here, Su felt that she would not be able to explain to Chu Xian. So, she took advantage of Chu Xian's visit today and asked Chu Xian to take Qiaoxi back. Chu Xian suddenly changed his expression and put on a very serious face. He sat in the back seat, shook his head at Su, and said seriously, "Today, in addition to coming to apologize to you for doing such sneaky things, I also want to tell you something." "What's the matter?" Su turned around and looked at Chu Xian's beastly appearance. She thought, did Chu Xian apologize to her just now? Didn't he keep begging her to sell him chicken? When did he apologize for stealing chickens and dogs? Then Chu Xian said, "Qiaoxi's backstage. The eldest young master of the Fong family should be here in 2 days." I think my place is too disgusting and not suitable for entertaining guests. Su, I will send your coordinates to the eldest young Master Fong.
No, no, no.
Chu Xian waved his hands quickly, squinting his eyes and smiling. The smile lines at the corners of his eyes were very deep. He explained to Su, you see, I knew you would be angry. We have already agreed on this matter. Fong Shui actually doesn't have any good feelings towards Qiao Si. As for the son in Qiao Si's belly, no one knows how she got pregnant. Anyway, Fong Shui didn't voluntarily go to Qiao Si's bed. Fong Shui said that we will ensure that his son is safe and sound. There are 6 military cards for guns and ammunition. You see, you will also benefit from it by then, right? I will give you one of the 6 military cards for guns and ammunition. I want the 4 army card. Su stretched out her fingers and raised 4 fingers to Chu Xian. She was so angry. Her Bafang village had a Qiao Si, who was an eyesore every day. She was lucky that her doctors and nurses didn't get internal injuries. She also raised Qiao Si and Fong Shui's son to be plump and white. Chu Xian only gave her 1 military card of guns and ammunition. 2 military cards, no more. Then give me a few more boxes of crystal cores. Make a deal. It's just a crystal core. Chu Xian has plenty of them. He is surrounded by a tide of maggots, and the crystal cores are almost piled up into a mountain. They are not worth much. Brother Pai, who was sitting in the driver's seat, secretly gave Su a thumbs up at an angle where Chu Xian couldn't see. It was effortless for him to take the guns and ammunition from Chu Xian's 2 military trucks, plus a few boxes of crystal cores. That was great. After the deal was done, Su now felt that Chu Xian was much more pleasing to the eye. Not only did Chu Xian become much more pleasing to the eye, but when she thought of Qiao Silai, Su no longer found it weird. Anyway, it was okay to act like that. No matter how much she acted like that, there was always a good man willing to pay for it, and that was the most important thing. On the way to the laundry room, passing by Qiao Si's residence, Su drove Chu Xian out of the car and asked him to go see the financial sponsor. She chatted with Brother Pai all the way and drove to the door of the laundry room. Thinking about how Chu Xian was forced to run out of the maggot tide today, it must not be difficult for Chu Xian to escape from it. Chu Xian can come and go freely, so there is no need for Xia Yaoshi to stay in the maggot tide. It's just that Chu Xian mixed in the maggot tide to get more crystal cores. What is Xia Yaoshi staying in there for? For Xia Mu and Xia Qingyan? Thinking of this, Su sneered unconsciously. Ling always said that she was a big burden and a drag. No matter how big a burden Su was, she was not even 1/10 of Xia Qingyan and his mother. After getting off the car, Su walked to the yard of the laundry room. Before she even entered the door, she heard the sound of dozens of washing machines running in the laundry room. The sounds intertwined together, just like thunder. Along with the thunder, there was the sound of mahjong being rubbed, and occasionally there was a woman's surprised cry, Gang Shanghua. Oh, I'm confused. What bad luck. Try again. Su lowered her head and looked at the yard filled with buckets of various colors, divided into 2 camps, one for washed clothes and the other for unwashed clothes. After a while, a man came out with a bucket of washed clothes. As soon as he walked out of the door, he saw Su standing in the yard. He was stunned and smiled awkwardly. Master, I didn't do anything, really. Pai Go, who was standing behind Su, lowered his head in a headache, stepped forward and explained to Su. Mei Xingnan and the other women wanted to play mahjong, so they randomly asked a few men to help them wash clothes. The men were all willing, and did not ask Mei Xingnan to give them anything in return. Haha, you've become more capable. Su nodded, indicating that she understood. No matter how nervous the man carrying the bucket was, she walked into the laundry room with her big belly. Li Xiuyu did a very good job. She even renovated the laundry room. I don't know where she got some sky blue paint from, but she painted the entire laundry room sky blue. A row of washing machines were placed against the wall. Mei Xingnan and 4 other women were playing mahjong on a small square table in the middle of the living room. Seeing Su come in, the other 3 women stopped playing mahjong and turned to look at Mei Xingnan. Mei Shengnan tilted her head and glanced at Su Su lazily. After slowly playing a card, she said to Su Su, "Wait a moment, I'll show you something." Su Su waited for a while. She found a chair and sat down, watching Mei Shengnan and her sisters playing mahjong and flirting with each other. After a while, Mei Shengnan pushed the cards in her hand away, lifted the tablecloth, and pulled out a piece of paper from under the red velvet tablecloth. She walked in front of Su Su, looked up at Su Su who was sitting on the chair, and handed the paper in her hand to Su Su. "Here." "What is it?" Su Su was curious, so she reached out to take it. She turned her wrist and saw a bunch of names written on the paper, including Lu Yin, Li Ying, Chu Xian, and Xia Yaoshi. Among the names, some were under Lu Yin's name, some were under Li Ying's name, some were under Chu Xian's name, and some were under Xia Yaoshi's name. At the same time, it also highlights the names of several people with special powers, such as who is a special power user, what their special powers are, what their special power levels are, and so on. "Where did you get it?" Su Su shook the paper in her hand and looked up at Mei Shengnan with a gleam in her eyes. Mei Shengnan sneered, her nail-painted fingers softly pressed against her collarbone, and her slender figure in lace pajamas moved, saying disdainfully, "If you hang out with men, you'll know everything. It's useless for me to have it, so I'll give it to you." "How many crystal cores?" Su Su habitually wanted to count the crystal cores for Mei Shengnan, but Mei Shengnan immediately spat at Su Su and said coldly, "You're using crystal cores to buy this thing. Aren't you deliberately insulting me? I just saw that you were pregnant, and it wouldn't be easy for you to be attacked by someone, so I was just being kind." Ha 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 ha. The three women at the card table immediately laughed at Mei Shengnan. Su Su couldn't help laughing. She guessed that it might be because she was attacked by the third-level wood-type mutant and the fat man that day, and Mei Shengnan happened to see it, so Mei Shengnan made this thing specially for her. Some things may be very troublesome for many people. For example, Su Su has been worried and wants to find out who is the spy and who belongs to whom. Brother Pai can't do it, you can't do it, but Mei Shengnan can do it. Sometimes women from all walks of life have faster sources of information than an orthodox intelligence department. The fact is, as Mei Shengnan said, if you roll around with a group of men, you will naturally know everything. After Su Su finished laughing, she looked at Mei Shengnan again and suddenly asked, "What kind of injustice have you suffered?" Mei Shengnan's smile froze and she snorted, "Does it count if I played a few games of mahjong with a bunch of men?" It was while playing mahjong that several people started chatting intentionally or unintentionally. They called it chatting, but in fact they could talk about anything under the sun. Mei Shengnan has a skill, which is to grasp what she wants to grasp from the sea of messy information, and then dig deeper into the topic without making any noise. No piece of intelligence is complete and coherent. Perfecting information is Mei Shengnan's talent. Su Su stood up, stretched out her hand, suddenly hugged Mei Shengnan, and said softly, "Thank you, thank you." The first thank you was for Xia Meishanan's effort in coming up with this list of spies. The second thank you was for the favor of collecting the bodies in the previous life. Su Su owed Mei Shengnan a thank you, and she said it now. "The material is too thin. Once the pajamas are wet, you can see clearly inside. In fact, I came here today to tell you this. You pervert." Mei Shengnan gently broke free from Su Su's embrace. Considering that Su Su was pregnant, she did not use much force. As soon as she broke free from Su Su's embrace, Mei Shengnan covered her chest with both hands and glared at Su Su with her beautiful eyes. However, Su Su seemed very happy. She smiled and turned to leave the laundry room. After walking out of the room, Su Su handed the list in her hand to Brother Pai, who was standing in the yard. Brother Pai looked down, and his face changed drastically. He turned around and caught up with Su Su. The two of them got into the car outside the yard one after the other. Brother Pai sat in the driver's seat and asked Su Su, who was sitting in the passenger seat, "Where did you get this list?" "There are 2 people on the list, but they are your father's right-hand men who were recently promoted. Maisie gave it to me." Su Su tilted her head and glanced at Brother Pai, who had an unusually serious expression. She said in a rather teaching tone, "So from now on, don't underestimate Mei Zi and his gang. They really helped us a lot this time. That's right, I never looked down on them. Brother Pai was telling the truth. He was a gangster himself and was not born into a noble family. He had never looked down on women like Mei Xingnan. However, because he now relied on Su Su and Yu to make a living, Brother Pai was much more self-disciplined than when he was a gangster. He never got close to Mei Xingnan. Now he knew that Mei Xingnan was of great use, so Brother Pai would discipline his gangsters and teach them to be more polite to Mei Xingnan and the other women. After driving for a while, Brother Pai looked ahead and saw Go Batian carrying 2 buckets of clothes coming out of the house where Qiao Si lived. He asked Su Su beside him, "What do you think we should do with those spies sent by Lu Yin? Now that Lu Yin has been beaten by Li Ying and his whereabouts are unknown, we might as well just kill those people." What a pity. Su Su rolled down the window on the passenger seat, looked at Go Batian, who was getting closer and closer, and said to Brother Pai beside him, "Since Lu Yin sent these people to lurk, they will definitely be of great use in the future. Keep a close eye on them. Maybe we can find Lu Yin from them?" As they were talking, the car from Bafong village was moving slowly and had already arrived beside Go Batian. Su Su smiled, looked out of the car window, and asked Go Batian, "Go do the laundry?" "Yes, yes." Go Batian felt a little embarrassed and put away the 2 buckets in his hands. Strictly speaking, they were just renting in Bafong village and were not considered residents of the village. But today, Qiao Si took out all the clothes they would use in the summer and asked him to take them to the laundry room to wash them. Go Batian didn't want to disobey Qiao Si's order, so he carried the 2 large buckets of clothes while thinking about how to tell Mei Xingnan and the other women. Unfortunately, I met Su Su on the way to the laundry room. His action of collecting the bucket actually seemed to be somewhat of an attempt to hide one's mistake. In fact, even from a long distance away, Su Su could see that the bucket that Go Batian was carrying was filled with Qiao Si's colorful clothes. But Su Su didn't say anything. The laundry room was set up there, and she had said before that anyone from Bafong village could go there to get their clothes washed. Although Qiao Si was not from Bafong village, she also paid the rent with the crystal core, so of course she could take her clothes to the laundry room to wash. "I just happened to meet you here, so I wanted to talk to you. Isn't there a wood-type psychic among you? The vegetable garden in our Bafong village has been growing too slowly recently. I wonder if your wood-type psychic can come out and help?" Su Su narrowed her eyes slightly, with a hint of smile, looking at Go Batian outside the car window. Chu Xian said that feng shui would soon come from Chuncheng, and people like Go Batian would not be able to stay in her Bafong village for long, so she would naturally squeeze them as much as possible. In addition, Su's mother has been keeping an eye on Su's father these days, and has no time to take care of her mutated soil. Su naturally thinks about finding a wood-type mutant to ensure the output of grain and vegetables. "No problem. That's absolutely no problem." Go Batian agreed immediately. He was the wood-type mutant among the 8 bodyguards. His ability had already reached the 2nd level, and he was about to reach the 3rd level. He also wanted to practice his ability more so that he could cross the threshold of the 3rd level as soon as possible. Su Su asked him to help grow vegetables in the yard of Bafong village, which just met his needs. "Then thank you for your help. If you run out of energy and need a crystal core, just let Brother Pai know." Facing the honest Go Batian, Su Su's attitude was quite kind. After exchanging a few polite words with Go Batian, she asked Brother Pai to drive the car back to the village for lunch. In the car, Brother Pai smiled at Su Su while steering the wheel. "Go Batian is a good person. It's a pity that he follows Qiao Si." "What a pity." Su Su leaned on the passenger seat and let out a breath slowly. She did not have the means that Li Ying and Lu Yin had. If she had the same means as them, she could take down Go Batian in minutes and ensure that Go Batian would be tied to the land of Bafong village for the rest of his life. But everyone has their own aspirations. Su Su has already obtained a lot. She believes that the most important people in her life are staying by her side, so she is not greedy and does not force Go Batian to do anything. As they drove to the entrance of the village, from a distance, they saw Yu getting off the small transport plane in the hot summer, wearing a fully armed desert camouflage suit and a tactical vest. The person who got off the transport plane with him was Su Xiaofeng. Su Xiaofeng had short hair parted in the middle, and he was wearing a white short-sleeved t-shirt, a pair of light blue jeans, and a pair of white sneakers. Because he was a water-based mutant, as his level of ability increased, his whole body looked very clean, and his skin became more delicate and smooth, full of moisture. This image feels much more handsome than the last time I saw him. Before the end of the world, he could have made a movie and become a second or third-tier star without any problem. In the strong wind caused by the propeller, he raised his arms and waved at Su Su, and waves of sand and dust flew in Bafong village. Su Su covered her nose and got out of the car. She glared at Yu, wondering why this small transport plane usually parked directly in the parking lot outside Bafong Villa, but this time it was parked at the entrance of Bafong village. Yi walked behind Su Xiaofeng, smiled at Su Su in the strong wind, trotted to Su Su's side and explained, Xia Yaoshe sent Su Xiaofeng here, saying that he has something important to discuss with us. That's why the transport plane was parked on the open space at the entrance of Bafong village today, because Su Su has been living at the entrance of Bafong village to accompany her mother recently. We have a lot of fun here today. Brother Pai got out from the driver's seat with a smile and smoothed his messy short hair in the sky full of yellow sand. Fortunately, Abeo had not brought the meal yet. If he had brought the meal now, all the people in Bafong village would have to eat sand today. Can you park the transport plane at Bafong Villa first, and then drive the people down? Su Su glared at Yu, covered her nose, turned around, and went back to the villa where Su's father and mother lived. At this moment, Su's father and mother had already returned. Su's mother was holding a basin of cold water, ready to wipe the sweat off Su's father's body. Seeing Su Su walking in with a dusty face and a big belly, followed by Yu, Brother Pai, and Su Xiaofeng, who were also covered in dust, she gave the basin of cold water in her hand directly to the three men and went back to the bathroom to get another basin of water for Su's father. Because of Su Su's stay, there has never been a shortage of clean water in this villa. The hotter the weather, the cooler the water Su Su releases. Over time, many people would come to Su's father and mother to ask for some water if they didn't have enough water or wanted to drink some ice water to cool off. This was a common occurrence, because it was at the entrance of the village, a not very secretive place with a very complicated population, and many eyes were staring at the villa where the Su family lived, so it was not easy to talk about what was happening in the main room with people coming in and out. So Su Su took Su Xiaofeng to the second floor, where there was also a living room, which was only for the use of the Su family. Su Xiaofeng sat down and explained the situation in front of Su Su, Yu, and Brother Pai. The current situation in the entire safe zone became very clear, even clearer than the situation monitored by the 4 special forces sent by Yu. First, let's talk about the incident a few nights ago when Wang Ziqiao and Li Ying led people and rushed into Lu Yin's territory. Lu Yin did not put up any desperate struggle. Before Wang Ziqiao and Li Ying's people pounced on him, he had already run away with all the psychics in his hands. The ordinary soldiers put up a symbolic resistance for a while, and then followed Li Ying's idea and escaped from the west in 3 groups. Those who did not leave were either dead or recruited by Li Ying. These ordinary soldiers actually have the fate of being cannon fodder. They are just paving the way for Lu Yin. Lu Yin's entire core force is those psychics he took away. Lu Yin did not run away somewhere else. He once kept a secret warehouse near Xia Yaoshe, and now Lu Yin's people are there. Now Lu Yinji and Xia Yaoshe have 2 intentions. He holds 2 relatives of Xia Yaoshe, Xia's mother and Xia Qingyan, in his hands. On the one hand, Lu Yinji wants Xia Yaoshe to help him clean up the maggots around the warehouse. On the other hand, he also borrows Xia Yaoshe's hand. When Wang Zijiao and Li Ying come to chase him, he directly coerces Xia Yaoshe to protect him. Of course, this is just the beginning. When the supplies in the warehouse are used up, Lu Yin will ask Xia Yaoshe for guns, people, and supplies. He will take Xia Qingyan and Xia's mother as hostages and rely on Xia Yaoshe for food and protection. No one will doubt that this situation is only temporary because Lu Yin has not gained a firm foothold. If Lu Yin has gained a firm foothold and recovered from his injuries, when he counterattacks Wang Zijiao and Li Ying, he will definitely force Xia Yaoshe to be the vanguard. Just a few days ago, Liang came to me and wanted to join forces with me to take the initiative against your captain Xia. Su Su sat opposite Su Xiaofeng. Looking at the anger on Su Xiaofeng's face, she squinted her eyes and smiled, and asked again, but I refused. So why did Xia Yaoshe send you here this time? Borrow a sniper. When Su Xiaofeng said this, a flash of anger flashed across his face. He looked at Yi Yu, who was sitting on the armrest of Su Su's sofa, and explained, as you know, we are all superpowered people who rose from civilians. Even if we were given a sniper rifle, we wouldn't be able to use it. So, our captain wants to borrow your sniper. We are responsible for sniping, and you are responsible for luring Louis now? Su Su tilted her head to show that she was very interested in the matter. When she saw Su Xiaofeng nodded solemnly, she tilted her head and looked up to ask Yi Yu beside her, will you do it?
Dry.
Yi Yu agreed immediately. Last time he lay in ambush for a whole night but failed to catch Luin. This time someone would help lure Luin out, so he would do it in vain. Okay. Happy cooperation. Su Su shrugged and nodded to Su Xiaofeng, and they reached a preliminary cooperation intention. The plan brought by Su Xiaofeng was much better than the strike-first plan given by Liang. Yi Yu and others did not need to take any risks. They could just hide aside and shoot from behind. Furthermore, Su Su felt much more comfortable cooperating with Xia Yaoshe than with Liang. When cooperating with Liang, she always felt that she was being calculated by Liang, and no matter how she thought about it, she felt uncomfortable. After the cooperation intention was reached, Yi Yu and Su Xiaofeng discussed the details. Su Su and Brother Pai then withdrew and walked down to the second floor. In the narrow corridor, Su Su listened to the faint whispers coming from the house. She stopped on the steps, stroking her belly, and said to Brother Pai, once Luin dies, don't keep his spies. Throw them directly into the trench to feed the bushes. Hearing this, Brother Pai was stunned. There was a nonchalant expression on Su Su's profile, as if he had just mentioned a trivial matter of eating and drinking. With just such a casual order, several lives were destined to feed the mutant bushes. He unconsciously developed a sense of confidence with Su Su. It was a pity that Su Su, with her ruthless nature of killing people, did not get involved in gangs or become a gang boss. After discussing the details with Yi Yu, Su Xiaofeng stayed in Bafang village for lunch, and then went to the clinic at the entrance of the village to look for Junjiu. He hadn't seen Junjiu for a long time, and Su Xiaofeng missed her very much. Junjiu seemed to have sensed something. As early as when Su Xiaofeng appeared in Bafang village, he found an excuse and followed Li Xia and the others to patrol the outskirts of the village. In the country villa, Su Su and Yi Yu were sitting face to face. Just when she was about to ask Xia Yaoshe about borrowing the sniper, Li Mingji came in like a gust of wind from outside the villa, followed by Go Batian, who looked anxious. What's wrong? Su Su sat at the table, not even having time to put down the chopsticks in her hand, and was still chewing rice. Because Su Xiaofeng was eating with them today, Su Su ate slower than usual. Su Su, something bad has happened. Are Qiao Si and Mei Xingnan fighting? I'm sorry, Su Su. Our eldest daughter got angry in the laundry room, and no one can stop her. What should we do? Li Mingji and Go Batian were talking about the same thing one after another. Su Su looked at Yi Yu, who was sitting opposite her at the table, then turned to look at Go Batian, frowned and asked, your eldest daughter has never been involved in women's affairs and has always boasted of her nobleness. Why did she fight with Mei Xingnan today? This. Go Batian lowered his head with shame on his face, seeming a little embarrassed to say it. Li Mingji said quickly, it's like this, Su Su, that Qiao Si is also tactless. She was obviously renting a house temporarily in Bafang village, but she took her clothes and asked Mei Xingnan to wash them. She also told Mei Xingnan that each of her clothes was designed by a famous designer and worth tens of thousands of RMB, and asked Mei Xingnan to wash them by hand. No, I didn't tell the laundry that.
I'm sorry.
Go Batian's face was red. Just this morning, he took Qiao Si's clothes to the laundry room. When he was leaving, Qiao Si did say such words, but Go Batian felt ashamed to tell Mei Xingnan all these words. After all, it was a different era. He asked someone to wash his clothes, but he didn't give them a penny. He also thought that his clothes cost tens of thousands of RMB each and asked Mei Xingnan to wash them by hand. Isn't this treating Mei Xingnan as a servant? As a result, because Ge Batian didn't say anything, Mei Xingnan poured the 2 buckets of clothes worth hundreds of thousands of RMB into the washing machine for washing. It's easy to imagine that Qiao Ci's summer clothes were made of thin materials and looked fairy-like. They were all made of various tulle and decorated with many gems. After washing several buckets in the machine, the tulle was scratched and torn by sharp gem brooches. When the clothes were brought back and hung in the yard to dry, Qiao Ci saw the tattered gauze at a glance. Is Mei Xingnan a pushover? Not to mention that this is after the apocalypse. Even before the apocalypse, she would never suffer in front of such a daughter of a wealthy family who is not interested in worldly things. She threw a few seductive glances and called a few sisters to hang around the sturdy bodyguards, saying something coquettish. The bodyguards said that they were also men, and their legs were weak. Mei Xingnan first removed Qiao Ci's support, then rolled up her sleeves to deal with Qiao Ci. After a few words, she raised her hand and slapped Qiao Ci twice. Qiao Ci was so angry that she was like a hen full of fighting spirit. She felt that it was okay to be bullied in front of Su Su, a superpower, but who was Mei Xingnan? She walked forward and started fighting with Mei Xingnan. This matter happened for this reason. Su Su sat at the table, pushed the half-eaten bowl in front of her forward, rolled her eyes at Ge Batian, and said to Li Mingji, "Let them make a fuss, as long as no one dies. Let them make a fuss as they please." It was such a small matter, but he rushed to report it to her. Sure enough, nothing serious happened in Bafang village. After Su Su finished speaking, she stood up, waved to Li Mingji, and walked out of the villa with her belly bulging. Li Mingji quickly followed her and reached out to help Su Su down the stairs. "You're just here to watch the fun." Su Su tilted her head to glance at Li Mingji's white nurse uniform. She knew that Li Mingji hated Qiao Ci the most. Now that Qiao Ci and Mei Xingnan were fighting, Li Mingji even put down her nursing work and ran here to complain to Su Su. If she wasn't here to watch the fun, what else could she do? Li Mingji smiled with pursed lips, neither admitting nor denying, and followed Su Su out of the villa. In the afternoon, Su Su had a prenatal checkup in the clinic. Now that she had entered the perinatal period, she had to have a prenatal checkup once a week. After listening to Zhuo Shijia and the young nurse's repeated complaints, and then hearing the news between Qiao Ci and Mei Xingnan, she felt that things were getting out of control. It is said that because Qiao Ci had a poor appetite on weekdays after giving birth to her son, although she had kept her son in Bafang Villa and had never visited him once, she did not feel better because of this. Instead, she became picky about food and would not eat at any time. As a result, she looked very thin and pitiful on weekdays and would fall down at the slightest breeze. So naturally, the physical fight between her and Mei Xingnan ended with Mei Xingnan's complete victory. Then Qiao Ci turned around and went to find Chu Xian crying, making a fuss, and even threatening to commit suicide. Chu Xian had just arrived today and planned to stay in Bafang village for a few days before going back to the Maggot Tide to continue hunting for crystal cores. So Qiao Ci went directly to Chu Xian and asked him to take people to smash the laundry room. But this laundry room was not opened by Mei Xingnan herself, but belonged to Su Su. Chu Xian had finally reconciled with Su Su, and the two restored bilateral trade relations. Naturally, they were unwilling to ruin this relationship over a laundry room, so Qiao Ci sat in Chu Xian's room and reportedly cried for more than 3 hours, which made Chu Xian helpless, and he ran to find Su Su. Since Jiao Saigan couldn't beat Mei Xingnan, he went to make trouble for Chu Xian, and Chu Xian went to make trouble for Su Su. Su Su didn't want to deal with the matter at all, so he called Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia. The three of them packed up, got into Yu's car, and ran out of Bafang village, as if they were fleeing. Because it was agreed that they would cooperate with Xia Yaoshi and send a sniper to snipe Luyin. Among the 18 special forces with superpowers, Yi was the best in all-round ability, so sniping a superpower person was naturally a piece of cake for him. So Yi was the best candidate to snipe Lu Yin. Yi left Bafang village before it got dark in order to deploy the troops in advance. Xia Yaoshe drew a range for Yi Yu on where the sniper would be placed, which was probably near the area where he was. He just needed to find a tall building where he could easily take action. Yu didn't want to take Su Su to a place full of maggots, and Su Su's big belly made him look very creepy. But Bafong village was now in chaos due to Qiao Si and Mei Xingnan. Su Su didn't want to let the two fight each other, so she could only avoid them. Let's talk about Su Su. She is not the kind of person who is content with what she has to live with. Life in Bafong village is too dull. It might have been okay for her to live there for 10 days or half a month, but several months have passed. The dullness has become boring for her. If she doesn't go out for some fresh air, Su Su feels that she will definitely suffer from prenatal depression. You thought that there were so many spies in Bafong village now. Although they were all caught by Mei Xingnan, if someone wanted to take advantage of the excitement to do something to Su Su, this might be a good opportunity. After learning that someone had attacked Su Su when he was away, Yu felt that no matter where he put Su Su, it would not be safe under his nose. So Yu drove steadily and brought Su Su, Zhuo Shijia, and Li Xiaoyu out together. Su Xiaofeng was thinking about Junjiu. He planned to talk to Junjiu after she came back from patrol. They would take a transport plane back to Xia Yaoshe the next day. So he did not leave today and stayed in Bafong village. He paid Brother Pai 100 crystal cores in rent and rented a villa to live in. Yi left 13 members of his 18-member special power team to guard the entire Bafong village and 4 teammates to monitor the entire safe zone. He took Su Su and the other 2 to the edge of the safe zone, and along the national highway in the safe zone, they searched for a place that could easily get close to Xia Yaoshe's area in the evening. The car lights shone brightly on the road ahead. The cars on the road were parked in a mess. Occasionally, 1 or 2 zombies were staggering on the road. Yi drove around them and had no intention of cleaning up these zombies. He was in a hurry and didn't want to kill these zombies because he didn't want to get out of the car to get the crystal core. Surrounding the large safe zone that Lu Yin had established before, the maggot tide radiated outward for several miles, so the road that Yu took Su Su and others to take was one that Su Su had never walked before. He tried his best to avoid places where maggots were rampant, and only walked on roads that were flat, not bumpy, and not dangerous. So it took them more than 2 hours to enter Xiongqing. Under the solar streetlights, Su Su looked at the piles of zombies wandering in front of him. It seemed that he had not seen so many zombies for a long time, and he seemed a little nostalgic. You guys stay in the car, I'll get off. Yi slowly stopped the car, opened the door, and got out. He reached into his pocket, took out a cigarette, and lit it. He turned to the trunk, took out the sniper rifle, and put it on his back. Then, with a cigarette in his mouth, he gathered fireballs with his rogue hands and threw them onto the road. The 2 big fireballs rolled whoosh and rushed towards the pile of zombies gathered in front. His level of supernatural powers has always been comparable to Su Su's. Sometimes Su Su takes her shortcuts more diligently, and her body can carry more energy than Yi Yu, but Yi Yu is really rolling in the apocalypse. Although he has no shortcuts to take, does not know how to cultivate the spirit, and even does not know where the spirit is at all, but after a few days after going out and coming back, his supernatural powers will be improved a little bit. As for the proficiency of supernatural powers, that still needs practice. It is useless for the body to carry a lot of energy. It needs real practice. If you don't practice for 3 days, your hands will become unfamiliar. Su Su practices at home every day to cultivate her spirit and take care of the fetus. Even though she spent 12 years in the apocalypse in her previous life, there will be times when her hands become dull. The end of the world is fair. It will not show mercy to anyone, including Su Su, who is pregnant. So when Su Su saw the zombies swaying towards him under the streetlight ahead, he opened the car door, stood out, and stuck his head out to look. The zombies were so densely packed, and there was no telling how many were following behind. So crowded was the wide road that there was no space left.
Su, come back.
Zhuo Shijia sat in the back of the car, with his head sticking out of the window, looking at Su Su, who was wearing a pair of canvas shoes and a light blue maternity dress. Because Su Su ate well, her belly was bigger than that of ordinary pregnant women in the apocalypse. Sometimes Zhuo Shijia saw Su Su standing and was really afraid that Su Su could not bear the weight of her belly, and would fall to the ground. Su Su tilted his head, smiled at Zhuoshijia, and waved his hand. 4 watermen condensed in front, behind, left, and right. Each of them held an ice knife in his hand and waved it in an orderly manner. Then he ran up, raised his saber with bared teeth, and rushed into the pile of zombies in front of him with very rich expressions, just like 4 butchers who killed people without blinking an eye. Seeing this, Yu, who was standing by the car, turned around and glared at Su Su, as if questioning Su Su. What did Su Su promise him when she came here? She said she promised to follow him obediently, not to run, jump, or do somersaults, and to put her stomach first. But now Su Su didn't run, jump, or do somersaults. She shrugged at Yu innocently, turned her head, and said to Li Xiuyu, who had already walked out of the car, "Be careful. These zombies now are not the ordinary zombies a few months ago. There may be 1 or 2 evolved zombies hiding among them. I'll be careful." Li Xiuyu was still wearing her white t-shirt and overalls, holding a machete made by a fortune teller. It was light and sharp, very suitable for a girl like Li Xiuyu. This time she came out at the request of Su Su, because after evolving for so many months, Li Xiuyu didn't want to be out of touch with society, so she took the initiative to propose to go out with Su Su to exercise. And, to be honest, she felt it was quite embarrassing. After evolving for such a long time, she only evolved an aphrodisiac fragrance and a pair of colorful butterfly wings. Li Xiaoyu didn't know what the use of this ability of hers was. If you ask Su Su, she has never seen such a bizarre supernatural power in her previous life, and she doesn't know what it will be used for. But she knows that God is always fair, and all things are interdependent and mutually exclusive. Li Xiaoyu's supernatural power will not be redundant, and it will come in handy one day. So Li Xiaoyu had no choice but to come out and figure it out on his own. Seeing a little girl like Li Xiaoyu taking the lead, brandishing a thin knife, and following Su Su's 4 watermen into the pile of zombies, Yu reached out, patted the back of the car, and said to Zhuoshijia inside, "Dr. Zhuo, this car contains the supplies we will need in the next few days. Please drive with us." "Okay, no problem." Zhuoshijia got out of the car and walked straight to the front of the car. Yu raised his hands behind his back and pulled out his 2 sabers with 2 swishes. He strode forward, and the hot flames on the sabers exploded with a crackling sound. A circle of high-temperature light emerged from Yiyu's body. Following Li Xiaoyu, he jumped into the pile of zombies and killed them all. Su Su also walked forward, but she walked very slowly. Now that her belly was big, it was inconvenient for her to move. She walked slowly, as if it was a stroll. Zhuoshijia drove and followed her. After walking for a while, Su Su felt her feet a little tired, so she got into the car and sat in the passenger seat to rest for a while. Her 4 watermen were still clearing a path through the pile of zombies ahead. Su Su was controlling their supernatural connection, and after killing the zombies, the 4 watermen were very clean and did a good job in the aftermath of digging out the crystal cores. "Oh, my belly is getting bigger and bigger. I'm out of breath after walking a few steps." Su Su sat in the passenger seat, breathing heavily. She reached out, laid the seat flat, and turned sideways. Only then did she feel better. In the driver's seat, Zhuoshijia stared at the front while reaching out to touch Su Su's big belly and laughed. "That's why I told you not to make any more trouble. Do you think you are still the same as you were 2 or 3 months ago? With such a big belly, you'll be in trouble if you move." It was not like this in Su Su's previous life when she was pregnant with Xiao AI. At that time, she ate less and had little nutrition. When her belly was more than 7 months pregnant, it was smaller than it is now, and she didn't breathe so hard when walking. But in her previous life, Su Su's legs were always cramping. It happened almost every night in the late pregnancy, and sometimes she really wanted to chop off her legs. In this life, Xiao AI grew a little bigger than in the previous life, which put pressure on Su Su's internal organs and caused Su Su to gasp for breath all the time. But at least her legs didn't cramp anymore, which Su Su still thought was pretty good. "Don't eat too much." Zhuoshijia turned around and drove slowly forward while glancing at Su Su, who was lying on the passenger seat. "I feel that your pelvis is not big. If the fetus weighs more than 8 kilograms, it will not be easy to give birth naturally. Under the current conditions, of course, you should try to give birth naturally, so you should control your diet a little bit on weekdays. How can I control this appetite? Su was also distressed. Despite her petite figure, she had to eat from a large bowl. Often, after finishing a bowl of rice, she would feel hungry again within 2 hours before mealtime. If she was forced to control her appetite, she would feel weak all over, anxious and short of breath, as if she had never had a full meal in her life. Alas, Zhuoshijia sighed deeply as he looked at Su's expression. He put his fingers on the steering wheel, calculated the time, and said, "It's almost 8 months. Starting tomorrow, I will prepare a nutritional diet for you. You can't let Xiao Ai grow too fast, but she still needs all the nutrients she needs. For a normal birth, hold on for the last 2 months." Good. When Su heard that Zhuoshijia was going to prepare a nutritional diet for her, she felt powerless. She had seen the nutritional diets prepared by these doctors and nurses for Ruerui and those pregnant women. They were asked to eat a certain amount of noodles in the morning and, at most, a glass of milk 2 hours later. They were asked to have a bowl of chicken soup with their lunch, and their meat intake was strictly controlled. Basically, the total amount of meat they ate in a day was just a small amount. They were asked to have a few biscuits 2 hours after lunch. They were not asked to eat meat for dinner, but rice with vegetables and, at most, a bowl of chicken soup. 2 hours after dinner, they were asked to have another glass of milk. The total food intake for the whole day is not as much as Su eats in one meal. But what Zhuoshijia said is right. Now is the end of the world. Even if medical equipment is complete, we should still insist on natural childbirth if possible. This way, the chances of the mother and child being infected with the doomsday virus will be much lower. In addition, natural childbirth will help the mother recover faster, as she will be able to walk around after giving birth. The water in the baby's lungs will be squeezed out through the birth canal, which is beneficial to the baby. As the two discussed the topic of natural childbirth, gradually the number of zombies ahead seemed to be insufficient. Soon, the 4 watermen, Li Xiaoyu and Yiyu, had almost cleared the road ahead. The sky gradually darkened. Yiyu turned back and drove for a while before finding a building. He planned to rest in this building tonight. This place is about an hour's drive from the safe zone originally established by Lu Yin. There are many shopping malls and tea shops among the high-rise buildings. Before the end of the world, this was a tea street, and all the tea transactions in Xiangqing were held here. Father Su loves tea. When he is bored in his spare time, he makes himself a pot of tea and lies in a rocking chair with his eyes closed to take a nap. He says this is the most leisurely and comfortable time in his life. When Yi parked the car, Su took the opportunity when he was taking the tent and other things out of the trunk, and then she called Li Xiaoyu and Zhuoshijia and went into a tea shop. This area was originally designated as a safe zone by Lu Yin, so it was cleared once by Xia Yaoshi and others. The small supermarket nearby was empty and no supplies could be found. Because it was the end of the world, people had difficulty even getting a sip of water, let alone having the leisure to taste tea, so the tea shop was well preserved with no signs of anyone having been there. This was the range that Xia Yaoshi drew for Yiyu to snipe Lu Yin. Yiyu walked around the area. He thought there would be a lot of maggots in this range, but he didn't expect that there was not a single maggot to be seen. That made things much easier for him. Su planned to move some tea for Su's father. Since none of the 3 knew which tea was good or bad, they just moved a few boxes and put them in the trunk of Yiyu's car. If there were more, the trunk of Yiyu's car would not be able to hold them all. While Su and the other 2 were busy moving tea, Yu had already entered the building he had chosen, carrying a tent and other marching equipment. He originally wanted to go in and clean out the remaining zombies in the building first, but Yu discovered that Xia Yaoshi was very clean and even cleaned out the zombies in the surrounding buildings, which saved Yu a lot of trouble. This building is a commercial building. The first floor is a shop, the second floor is a private cinema, and the third floor and above are rented out to various small companies and training classes. Yu arranged for the 4 people to sleep in the private cinema. By the time Su and the other 2 climbed 1 floor and arrived at the place chosen by Yiyu for them, It was already so dark that they could not see their hands in front of them. The area they entered this time was part of the old city area, and the streetlights were not the solar-powered ones like the ones they had just seen, but the old electric ones. Counting it all, the end of the world has been here for more than half a year. The electricity that should have been cut off has already been cut off. Except for some areas with solar and wind power street lamps, the old city is dark everywhere. Fortunately, Yiyu is a fire-type mutant and is well prepared. After taking Su Su into the private cinema, he gave Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiuyu a candle, lit it, pointed to the room behind them, and said, "I have checked this room inside and out. There is nothing wrong. You will sleep in it tonight." The so-called private cinema can be as comfortable as possible. The room that Yiyu chose for Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiuyu even has a waterbed. If it is powered by electricity, it will vibrate. Out of curiosity, Su Su ran in to take a look. Perhaps Yiyu's aesthetic sense was very different from that of women. He just thought that women should like pink rooms and did not think that the decoration in this room was so ambiguous. The rose-red heart-shaped headboard and the vibrating water bed were for Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiuyu to sleep on. Yiyu privately thought that this was his way of taking care of women. Li Xiuyu and Zhuo Shijia stood outside the door, looked at the decoration of the fan room with a dull expression, looked at each other, and walked into the room in silence. It was not that they didn't want to say anything, but they were so speechless that they couldn't say anything. On the other hand, the room Yiyu chose for Su Su was much more normal. The whole room was decorated in the style of a Stone Age cave. The soft big bed did not have any vibration function, but was covered with a blanket that looked like animal skin. It was summer now, and fortunately Su Su was a human air conditioner. Otherwise, seeing such a thick blanket would make people feel hot just by looking at it. She also received a candle from Yiyu. With the weak light, Su Su held the candle in both hands and sat down on the blanket in her room. She looked at the large white screen in front of her and asked Yiyu, who was packing up the sniper rifle in the corner, "Where are you sleeping at night?" "I'm going to walk around the area, survey the terrain, and see if the surrounding area is safe." In the dim firelight, Yiyu stood up fully equipped, walked to Su Su, bent down, supported his hands on Su Su's sides, leaned forward, and kissed Su Su's lips, burning her so much that Su Su dodged back, frowned at Yiyu, and asked, "You haven't told me yet. When did Xie Yaoshi ask you to do it?" When she came out, Su Su insisted on coming out to hide away, so she didn't have time to ask Yiyu about these details. Looking at this, could it be tonight? Su Su lowered her head and touched the wetness on her lips. She said nothing, then looked up at Yiyu as he turned around and lifted the tent to go out. She propped herself on the soft bed with one hand and gently called out to Yiyu as he was about to leave, "Be careful. Don't expose yourself." Rest assured, Yiyu didn't look back. He carried the tent on his back and a sniper rifle in his hand. He reached out and closed the door of the room for Su Su. Actually, speaking of Yiyu, he seems to be a little stupid on weekdays. That's just because he doesn't understand and is not good at a lot of common sense in life and relationships between men and women. But when it comes to marching, fighting, assassination, sniping, etc., Yiyu is much more proficient than Su Su. This is what he practiced. Like now, before carrying out a sniper attack, he was seen taking 3 girls with him, as if they were out for a trip and feeling relaxed. In fact, the undercurrents were surging inside, and I'm afraid only Yiyu knew about it. Su Su sat in the dark room with a candle lit, looking at the bright moon outside the window. Perhaps it was psychological factors at work. She always felt that tonight. The bright moon in the black sky was emitting a pale moonlight. The pale moonlight illuminated the earth. Below the private cinema, on a narrow street, there were cars parked in a haphazard manner. The cars were covered with a thick layer of dust, which reflected a faint light in the moonlight. The surroundings were terribly quiet, as if you could hear a needle falling on the ground. Su Su had a bad feeling in her heart. She lay on the bed, blew out the candle, and waited in the dark for Yiyu to come back. When she was about to fall into a light sleep, a bird suddenly flapped its wings and flew over in the black night sky. Under the pale moonlight, it circled around the area several times. In the quiet darkness, Su Su suddenly opened her eyes, with silver light shining in them. Where did this bird come from in such a quiet world? It was weird just to think about it. She got up quietly, with her belly sticking out, and walked barefoot to the window. Through the curtains, she looked up into the sky. It was a bright red mutant bird, a bit like a lark, but with a very long tail. It seemed to be inspecting the area with a purpose, then slowly flew away and went to inspect another block. Everything in the room seemed eerily quiet. On Sue's bulging belly, there was a small bump that moved back and forth inside her belly. It seemed as if Xiao AI was protesting to her mother, "It's time to go to bed. Why is she still getting up and making trouble?" Su lowered her head, reached out her hand to touch the small raised bump under the thin fabric, and rubbed it soothingly. She ignored the little baby making a fuss in her stomach and just kept her eyes on the tall buildings surrounding the open space. Suddenly, she discovered that when Yu tried to hide himself, the energy fluctuations all over his body were actually restrained so well that even she didn't know where Yu was hiding. What followed was endless silence. Su leaned against the window, looking out through the gap. She waited for a long time, but no sound was heard. It was as if the bird that had just flown away was just an ordinary mutant bird that occasionally passed by. She yawned, walked back to the bed, and wanted to lie down and continue sleeping, but she heard the sound of a bird flapping its wings again. This time it was not the mutated lark from before, but Lu Yin's eagle. "Here we come." At that moment, Su felt extremely refreshed, and she felt that her blood was boiling. She was no longer sleepy, so she got up and walked to the window. She raised her wrist and looked at the special watch on her wrist. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. A series of green dots appeared and flashed on it. Some kind of communication that Su could not understand was being discussed enthusiastically on her watch. Suddenly, her door was opened. Su was horrified, with an expression of "I'm afraid" of a ghost on her face. In the darkness, the door was getting bigger and bigger. Just next to the door, there was a still photo from the TV series The Ring. Su looked at the still photo from the TV series The Ring. Just when she was about to pour water on Sadako's head behind the door, Yu's head popped out from the... "Are you acting, Sadako?" Su widened her eyes and looked at Yu, who was still a little confused. Maybe Yu didn't find her in bed and was looking for her, but suddenly heard her standing by the window and talking. Yu pushed the door open a little wider, patted his chest, exhaled a long breath, and said to Su, "I was so scared that I thought you were missing."
Bah.
Su rolled her eyes at Yu, walked back to the bed and sat down, looking up at Yu, who came in. "Isn't Lu Yin coming soon? How come you have time to come back to see me?" "It's coming soon, but not for the time being." Yu walked to Su's side, bent down, raised his hand and touched her belly with a look of heartache. "I just worry about you, so I came to see you. I'll go do something later. Before I come back, tell Dr. Zhua and Li Xiuyu that no one can go out, turn on the lights, and don't talk too loudly."
Good. Shushunari.
There were birds in the sky watching every move on the ground. If there was any disturbance, Lu Yin might not come this way. By then, not only would Yiyu's deployment be destroyed, but Xia Yaoshi would also be alerted. "After we finish tomorrow, I'm afraid we'll have to drive back." In the darkness, Yiyu's voice was deliberately low, and he sounded rather annoyed. He said to Su, "I originally thought that we would take the transport plane that sent the meat back, so that you and my girl could also experience the feeling of riding a transport plane, but the transport plane is out of kerosene."
Ah?
"What should we do?" "Let's burn gasoline." Su deliberately acted cute, trying to ease the ominous feeling in her heart. She didn't know how to tell Yu, but she always felt that something big would happen tonight. "TSK, airplanes can't use gasoline."
Yeyu similet.
In the darkness, he raised his hand and touched the top of Su's head. At this moment, he actually felt that Su was very cute. Seeing that Su didn't say anything and didn't wave his hand away like in the past, Yiyu's Iron Man's heart softened instantly. He withdrew his hand that was rubbing Su's head and held Su's big belly with both hands. He lowered his head and kissed her through her clothes and belly. He said softly with a gentle expression, "Let's take the car. Dad drives very steadily, right?" Just be good and don't make trouble. Dad will go to do something. After he is done, he will come back to sleep with you. Sleep? Su couldn't help laughing when she saw such a big man with a strong body saying such childish words. Xiao Ai was very fond of Yu's tricks and immediately settled down in Su's belly. Originally, she was about to make a scene because Su didn't sleep, but now she was as obedient as a little white rabbit, quietly waiting for her father to come back and sleep with her. Just go quickly, don't worry about us. I can protect myself. Su hurried Yu away, fearing that Yu would be nagging here. She didn't know when Lu Yin would come over. She pushed Yu out of the door in a few seconds and fell asleep. Since Yu didn't allow them to light up and couldn't make any noise, what else could they do if they didn't sleep? She fell asleep peacefully and slept for about 2 or 3 hours. When it was dawn, Su woke up again and knocked on the doors of Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiuyu. She told them to try not to make any noise today and not to go downstairs for activities. Then, a car drove over to the quiet open space outside the private cinema. Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiuyu were still sitting on the vibrating waterbed, their faces showing dazed looks as if they had just woken up. Su hurried back to her room, opened the curtain by the window a little, and looked out. She saw a survivor's vehicle, which looked like it had just emerged from a tide of corpses. There were still many dead bodies of white maggots on the body of the vehicle, and as the vehicle sped along, the dead bodies of the maggots fell off the body of the vehicle. The car was running so fast that it was impossible to tell who was inside it. In the blink of an eye, it had sped across the open space and arrived at another block. After a while, a few zombies came over from other blocks, staggering towards them aimlessly. Behind Su, Li Xiaoyu had already packed up and brought Su a big steamed bun. The bun was steamed by Su's mother and the gang, using flour stored in a farmer's home. Su, there are zombies. Should we kill them? Li Xiaoyu asked. No need. Su glanced at Li Xiaoyu and instructed again, don't move anything. Go and lock the door of the theater.
Good.
Li Xiaoyu nodded, biting a big steamed bun in his mouth, and went to lock the door. About 10 minutes later, the car that had left drove back, attracting a long line of zombies. Li Xiaoyu locked the door and walked back. He imitated Su and looked through in the window. He asked in a curious voice, Su, what does this car want to do? I guess they're setting up the scene. Su stared at the car. After leading a bunch of zombies back, he went to another place and explained to Li Xiuyu. Lu Yin took Xia Yaoshi's relatives and forced Xia Yaoshi to do things for him. He must have let Xia Yaoshi clear the way for him so that Lu Yin can escape from the maggot tide smoothly. However, it would not be easy for Xia Yaoshi to lure Lu Yin out. Lu Yin had served in the army for many years, so how could he show up so easily? He wanted Xia Yaoshi's men to clear a way ahead for him to facilitate his retreat. Once they retreated to a safe place, Lu Yin would be like a tiger returning to the mountains, and Xia Yaoshi might not be able to find any trace of him. And that car was attracting zombies everywhere, probably trying to stop Lu Yin here, so that you could snipe him more easily. This is what Su guessed, but she didn't know if it was right. At the moment she had just finished whispering, in addition to the sounds of the zombies in the air, a boom sound of crushing suddenly came from a far distance. In the dimly lit room, Su and Li Xiaoyu stood on the left and right sides of the window, looked at each other, and then looked out the window. They saw a convoy rushing over from the corner in front. In the front were many vehicles of survivors, followed by 2 military jeeps, followed by a camouflaged armored vehicle, and finally a few more military jeeps, and behind the military jeeps were a few more vehicles of survivors. The queue was a very long one. Because the zombies were attracted by humans, and there were many living people here, in addition to the many zombies standing on the open ground, a lot of zombies also gathered around not far ahead. The survivors' vehicle at the front of the convoy stopped and began to kill the zombies in a proper manner. Perhaps it was the birds that Lu Yin released yesterday that discovered that there were not so many zombies in this area, so when they finally broke out from the maggot tide, they found that there were so many zombies on the road ahead. Lu Yin felt strange, and saw that in the middle part of the armored vehicle in the convoy, a dark green cover was opened on the closed roof, and a red mutant lark flew out from it, and flew into the sky. It was the bird that Su Su saw last night. I guess Lu Yin also realized that something was wrong and wanted to release a bird to investigate the situation. Su Su was worried about Yu, wondering if Yu would think that the bird was in the way and shoot it. But it seemed that she was overthinking it. Yu knew the tricks better than she did. He let the bird fly high and far to explore the surrounding environment without moving. After a while, Su Su saw Xie Qingyan's head popping out from the roof of the armored vehicle. The medium-length hair was floating in the air. As soon as his head popped out, he shouted at the vehicles of the survivors in front. Brother, the commander told you not to play tricks. Let him leave as soon as possible. Brother, help. Don't play tricks anymore. My mother and I are in his hands. At the front, the door of a black jeep opened and Xie Yaoshe stepped out. He turned his head sharply and looked at the head on the armored vehicle. He sneered and said, Commander, I, Xie, said I would lead you out of the maggot tide, and I will lead you out. Now that you are out, please release my aunt and my brother first. In the armored vehicle, Xie Qingyan was silent for a moment. His body trembled, and he cried and trembled. Brother, please be merciful and help the commander to clean up the zombies in this area. The commander said, Don't think he doesn't know. All the zombies in this area were led here by you this morning, just to stop him from moving forward. Brother, please don't hurt us, and quickly stop the car in the front from attracting zombies. This Xie Qingyan. Xie Yaoshe was clearly saving him and his mother, but he said Xie Yaoshe was harming them? Xie Yaoshe might just let Lu Yin take Xie Qingyan and his mother away, just to fulfill Lu Yin's wish? Isn't this harming Xie Yaoshe and his mother? Su Su shook her head behind the window, thinking that Xie Yaoshe would be dragged to death by Xie Qingyan and his mother in this life. Xie Yaoshe pursed his lips tightly, with a handsome face, looking at Xie Qingyan on the armored vehicle, with anger and sadness, and full of helplessness. He was trying to save himself, but he couldn't be cruel and ignore the lives of Xie Qingyan and his mother. He was even more unwilling to let Lu Yin catch Xie Qingyan and his mother and control him. So this time, no matter whether Xie Qingyan resented him or did not understand him, he had to rescue Xie Qingyan and Xie's mother and at the same time, let Lu Yin die here. Seeing that Xie Yaoshe didn't move, he only sent a small number of people, not trying hard to kill the zombies that rushed over. A gun stretched out from the armored vehicle and pressed against Xie Qingyan's jaw. At the same time, Xie's mother's head was pushed out again. She cried and said to Xie Yaoshe, Yaoshe, go, don't worry about us anymore. Lu Yin is not a human being. If you are driven by him, you will live a life worse than Fei Fei. Fei Fei? How could she be living a life worse than death? Su Su remembered the wood-type supernatural being named Fei Fei, who seemed to be one of Xie Qingyan's admirers. In the end, she was sold to Li Ying by Xie Qingyan. Now she fell into Lu Yin's hands. Why did Lu Yin make Fei Fei's life worse than death? Then, it seemed that Xie's mother's words stimulated Lu Yin. I don't know what he did to Xie Qingyan in the armored vehicle. I only heard Xie Qingyan howling like a pig being slaughtered. While yelling, he shouted at Xie Yaoshe, I told you to open the way, don't play tricks, didn't you hear? Didn't you hear? You insisted on doing it, insisted on blocking the commander's way. I am in so much pain, it's all because of you. It's all because of you. Isn't it because Xie Qingyan wanted to be rich and famous that he went to Lu Yin to ask for an official position? Behind the window, Su Su sneered and saw that Xie Yaoshe's expression was sometimes cold and hard, and sometimes soft. He seemed to be angry because of Xie Qingyan's words, but he couldn't bear Xie's mother crying.
Shushu looked very impatient.
I don't know how long this Xie family will drag on. All I could hear was Xie Yaoshe saying sternly, Lu Yin, I have kept my promise and sent you here. You let my aunt and brother go. Today, you and I have nothing to do with each other. If you still want to capture them and use them to control me, then you will definitely not get away with it today. He also had his insistence. If you let Lu Yin take Xie Qingyan and Xie's mother away today, Xie Yaoshe would become Lu Yin's subordinate from now on. So no matter what, Xie Yaoshe must let Lu Yin release Xie Qingyan and Xie's mother first. In the armored vehicle, Xia Qingyan continued to wail and curse Xia Yaoshi for being a heartless person. Xia's mother kept crying and told Xia Yaoshi to leave them alone. It seemed that Lu Yin wanted to use this method to have a final tug-of-war with Xia Yaoshi, but unfortunately, the zombies around them were being attracted by Xia Yaoshi's men more and more, and they were getting denser and denser. If they were not careful, it would turn into a small zombie tide. In the sky, the mutant lark flew back and forth, chirping, as if reminding Lu Yin that if he didn't leave, a large group of zombies would be coming. By then, he would have just emerged from the tide of maggots, but would have to return to the tide of zombies again. Susu's ominous feeling in her heart became stronger and stronger. She was behind the window, and she really wanted to smash Lu Yin's armored vehicle. At this time, why was Xia Yaoshi still hesitating? She was afraid that a wave of zombies would really come soon. She and Yi Yu and others had to leave before the zombies came. Then, Lu Yin laughed in the armored vehicle and said, "If I let Xia Qingyan and your aunt go, I may not be able to get through today. How about this? Let's make a fair deal. I'll let one go, and take one. You let me go this time, and as for the future, we'll talk about it later." In Xia Yaoshi's silence, suddenly, Xia's mother screamed. No one knew what Lu Yin had done to Su's mother in the armored vehicle. Xia Yaoshi immediately nodded with a cold face and gritted his teeth and said, "Okay. I promise you let my aunt go first. Brother, let me go first. Let me go first." When Xia Qingyan heard this, his nose was snotty and tears were flying. The dark thoughts he displayed in such a life and death situation made everyone who heard it feel sick. Xia's mother was shocked and had tears on her face. She turned her head in disbelief to look at her son, whom she loved so much. Although she was also planning to ask Xia Yaoshi to save Xia Qingyan first, but hearing these words coming from Xia Qingyan's mouth, Xia's mother's heart was involuntarily broken. Xia Yaoshi also turned his eyes away in disgust and insisted, "Let my aunt go first, and I'll let you pass."
Impossible.
3 words came out from the armored vehicle. It seemed that everyone knew that Xia Qingyan was a. Even Lu Yin knew it. To Xia Yaoshi, Xia's mother was more valuable than the weird Xia Qingyan. If Xia's mother was released, Xia Yaoshi would turn against him and kill Lu Yin, regardless of Xia Qingyan's life or death. It was entirely possible. Go, child, go. Mother Xia's thin face was filled with heartache and regret. She shed 2 strings of hot tears, looked at Xia Yaoshi in front of her and smiled with a pale face. "Yaoshi, you are a good child, and it is Auntie who has dragged you down."
I'm sorry.
Last time, it was Auntie who shouldn't have thought only of Qingyan's life. Auntie didn't consider you, and gave herself to Chu Xian. Now Auntie has fallen into Lu Yin's hands. It's Annie who has dragged you down. As she spoke, there was a sense of determination in her eyes. Before Xia Yaoshi could react, Xia's mother screamed madly, opened her mouth and bit it, and a large mouthful of blood spurted out of her mouth. It looked like she had bitten her tongue to commit suicide. Xia Yaoshi widened his eyes and was stunned for a second. Everyone around him was stunned for a second. They saw Xia Qingyan on the armored vehicle was sprayed in the face by Xia's mother's blood. He turned his head in shock and saw his own mother spitting blood from her mouth. At that time, Xia Qingyan screamed in fear, and at the same time, Xia Yaoshi moved, throwing out an electric spark, which rushed straight to the armored vehicle. More than a dozen psychics loaded in several military jeeps in front and behind the armored vehicle rushed out, and Xia Yaoshi's men also rushed out, and the 2 sides fought in a group. People were fighting each other, and no one cared about the zombies at all. It was just because the psychics would often launch large-scale attacks against each other, and the zombies couldn't get close for the time being. Seeing this from the window, Susu was so angry that she threw down the curtains and turned around a few times in the dimly lit room. There was no need to look at the situation. It was sure that there would be a tide of zombies. Okay. Of course, she also supported Xia Yaoshi and Lu Yin in a head-on confrontation, but Xia Yaoshi was really too slow. If he had taken action earlier instead of bargaining with Lu Yin, the number of zombies gathered would have been less. Now Xie Yasher failed to save the person he wanted to save, and he waited until Xie's mother bit her tongue to commit suicide before he took action. He wasted so much manpower and material resources, and the result was such a failure. Xie Yasher should also reflect on the biggest mistake he made in planning this action. In the open space, Xie Yasher's electric sparks did not actually cause much damage to the armored vehicle. After all, if Lu Yin wanted to travel in the apocalypse without a modified armored vehicle, how could he protect himself? How could he keep the hostages? In the purple electric sparks, the two wheels under the armored vehicle shrank, and Xie Qingyan's head on the roof of the vehicle hit the roof cover of the armored vehicle with a bang. At this time, Xie Yasher took a few big steps onto the armored vehicle, pulled out Xie Qingyan, and threw a few electric sparks into it. Su Su, who was inside the window, praised this trick in her heart, thinking that it would definitely kill Lu Yin with electricity. However, she saw in the chaotic scene in the last military jeep, a man in casual clothes, holding Fei Fei in his hand, got out of the car in the chaos and ran to the place where there were the least zombies. Xie Yasher pulled out the bound Xie Qingyan and took out Xie's mother, whose mouth was full of blood. He looked down and saw that there was no sign of Lu Yin in the armored vehicle that he had thrown a bunch of electric sparks at. He was just an ordinary psychic wearing Lu Yin's clothes and a black eye patch on his face. That psychic and the two psychics driving the armored vehicle have now been electrocuted to death by Xie Yasher. In the chaotic scene, people were fighting each other, and zombies rushed forward recklessly. After a while, several lives were lost, and the real Lu Yin was nowhere to be found. At this moment, Xie Yasher was not in the mood to look for the real Lu Yin. Just as he lowered his head to look at Xie's mother in his arms, Yi moved. A bullet was fired from some tall building, and with a bang, it hit a lark flying in the sky. The bird was not killed by the shot, and it chirped a few times. Yi fired another shot. The two shots were enough to find out who Lu Yin was. He was the man in the crowd, wearing ordinary clothes, holding Fei Fei and running forward. He stopped, threw Fei Fei to the ground, covered his eyes with his hands, and screamed "ah" twice in pain. Within 2 seconds, before Yi Yu's sniper rifle aimed at his head, Lu Yin grabbed Fei Fei from the ground, turned around, and blocked Fei Fei in front of him. A miserable eagle's cry was heard in the sky. From the perspective of a bystander, Su Su saw the eagle swooping down from the sky and rushing straight towards a window of a building. It's bad. Yi fired 2 shots in a row and found Lu Yin, but he was also exposed. Su Su suddenly felt a dull pain in her heart. She felt that Yi Yu might be injured, so she was a little anxious. She moved her fingers, and the white ice on the road began to condense. But before her ice could reach Lu Yin, another shot was fired from a building behind Lu Yin, and it went straight through the back of Lu Yin's head. The bullet went through Lu Yin's eyebrows and rubbed Fei Fei's shoulder, bursting out a blood flower, which was charming and full of blood. There is more than one sniper at the scene. Who was standing next to him was pulled out of the armored vehicle by Xie Yasher like pulling out weeds and thrown to the ground. Facing the scene of people beating people and zombies running around with no one to take care of them, his face was full of panic, and he didn't show any sadness for Xie's mother at all. Su Su sneered, "Xie's mother is dead. Why keep such a trouble alive?" She pinched her index finger and flicked it in the direction of Xie Qingyan. An ice needle as thin as a bull flew towards Xie Qingyan's head. Before the thin ice needle touched Xie Qingyan's temple, it was intercepted by an electric spark from Xie Yasher. In the chaos, he held the body of Xie's mother and looked in the direction of Su Su's energy surge. His eyes were filled with grief, and he shook his head slowly, meaning to tell Su Su that she couldn't kill Xie Qingyan. But Su Su would listen to Xie Yasher. Xie Qingyan was such a scumbag. Wasn't his performance just now enough to disappoint everyone? Su Su glanced at Xie Yasher through the window, and a silver light flashed in his eyes, and dozens of ice needles the size of horseflies flew towards Xie Qingyan. Su Su. Xie Yasher roared. The roar was both sad and angry. He carefully put down Xie's mother in his arms, stretched out his hands, and spread out an electric net, blocking dozens of ice needles from Su Su. The ice needles hit the electric sparks, sparking many flames, and finally disappeared into the air. Perhaps Xia Yaoshi failed to control his strength, or perhaps he wanted to teach Su Su a lesson, but after blocking dozens of ice needles from Su Su, the electric net did not shrink and instead rushed directly towards the window where Su Su was. Su Su was startled, stretched out her hand to pull Li Xiuyu, quickly took 2 steps back, then turned around and strode out of the door. Outside the door, she met Zhuo Shijia, who was holding a blood pressure monitor in his hand. He looked at Su Su strangely and asked, "Su Su, where are you going?"
Kill.
After saying that, Su Su, with a hint of anger, commanded the water people to move away the obstacles blocking the entrance of the private cinema and strode out. At the moment when she pulled Li Xiaoyu and turned away from the window, in a certain building, Yi Yu, who was originally assigned to sniper Lu Yin, held a dead eagle in one hand and turned the sniper rifle with the other hand, and fired a shot at Xia Yaoshi's palm. The bullet passed through Xia Yaoshi's palm that pushed the electric net, meaning a warning. Xia Yaoshi is now in the sniper range. Dare to hurt him, Su Su. Xia Yaoshi frowned, covering his palm that was shot with a hole by the sniper rifle, and then he realized that Su Su must have a big belly now, and his mobility is not as good as before. The electric net he pushed out is very dangerous to Su Su, and Su Su may not be able to avoid it. Then the electric fence that was about to hit the window disappeared into the air in an instant. In just a few minutes, Su Su, wearing canvas shoes, a light color maternity dress, and with a big belly, walked to the first floor of the private cinema building. The main door on the first floor was a revolving glass door. There were 2 zombies turning around in the glass door. They just kept walking forward stupidly, not knowing that they were being made to turn around in circles by the revolving glass door. As if smelling the fragrance of Su Su, a zombie in the revolving glass door immediately turned around and walked towards Su Su, making a sound. However, as soon as it stopped, the zombie behind it was stuck in the revolving glass door and could only worry. Only after the first zombie staggered out of the glass door could the zombie behind it continue to move forward, following the first zombie and staggering towards Su Su. Then the third zombie came in behind the second zombie.
Su stood there, watching coldly.
Behind her, Li Xiuyu, worried that Su Su was pregnant and had difficulty moving, hurriedly chased after her with a knife in hand. She saw that the zombies seemed to be very orderly and were queuing in a long line. Li Xiaoyu walked forward with a knife, killing zombies one by one. After she chopped off the head of one zombie, the second one came forward and waited for her to chop it off. Su Su stood behind Li Xiaoyu and watched. Li Xiaoyu was now a superpower, and his strength was much different from before. In addition, what Li Xiaoyu was holding in his hand was a special weapon made by a fortune teller for chopping corpses. For Li Xiaoyu, chopping a zombie was as easy as cutting vegetables. It's just that this dish is a bit too long. The zombies are lining up to be chopped. Although it's funny, Su Su, who is going out to kill Xie Qingyan, has no patience to wait for Li Xiuyu to finish chopping the zombies. She stuck her head out from behind Li Xiaoyu and looked out the revolving glass door. Wow, the zombies outside are gathering more and more. There is no need for anyone to lead them. Many zombies in other areas, after being called by their own kind, have naturally migrated here. Su Su immediately gave up the idea of going out to kill Xie Qingyan and said to Zhuo Shijia, who followed behind him, "I think this may trigger a tide of corpses. Get ready, let's go upstairs." As troublesome as the maggot tide is, so is the corpse tide. After saying that, Su Su released 4 watermen, holding ice knives in their hands, and started to rush forward with great force. In 2 or 3 moves, they killed the zombies lined up and dug out the crystal cores by the way. Su Su waved his hand, and with the help of Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiuyu, they went up the stairs through the safety stairs. If it is a tide of zombies, the second floor will not be very safe. There will be more than 1 or 2 high-level zombies in the tide of zombies. Some zombies have superpowers, and some are very fast. Su Su has also seen a kind of zombie that can jump. Even if the survivors hide on the 5th or 6th floor, they will be caught and eaten by the zombies that jump up. So when they reached the 2nd floor, at the door of the private cinema, Su asked Li Xiu to go in and take out their food and clothes, and then climb the emergency stairs directly to the 7th floor. The 7th floor is a professional dance school. In addition to a reception hall, there is a dance classroom with a very wide view. During the day, there is no need to turn on the lights and the classroom is very bright. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows, you can see the situation downstairs clearly. Right here. Any higher, and I won't be able to control the waterman. The control of superpowers also has a distance. The farther the distance, the more superpowers are needed. Su walked to the floor-to-ceiling window with her bulging belly and looked down. On the distant blocks, there were dense swarms of zombies rushing towards the side. Under this building, Xie Yaoshi was holding one hand down, carrying the body of Xie's mother on the ground with great effort on his shoulder. Seeing the number of zombies increasing, the zombies moving from the corner of the block were pushed to the ground by their peers behind them, and in the distance, zombies were squeezed by zombies, unable to move. They fell down and were instantly stepped on by their peers. Some zombies were knocked down, and some simply rolled on the road, just like the tide, one wave after another, each wave more turbulent than the last. The rest of Xie Yaoshi's men and Lu Yin's men stopped fighting each other and using their superpowers. Perhaps they realized that the number of zombies was increasing, and it seemed like they could not kill them all. Of course, the situation was not right, and they could not attack each other anymore. So they joined hands to deal with the zombies together, and everyone worked together to retreat to a building opposite. Because of her good eyesight, Su saw Xie Yaoshi carrying Xie's mother's body, and she pulled Xie Qingyan. But Xie Qingyan actually raised his hand to open Xie Yaoshi's hand. Xie Yaoshi's palm was red with a small red hole. His palm drooped weakly for a moment after being hit by Xie Qingyan. Then he seemed to be furious. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Xie Qingyan by the back of the collar and dragged him into the building. You deserve it. You should have a taste of the feeling of being treated so ungratefully. Su muttered to herself, leaning against the glass window and watching. Doesn't Xie Yaoshi love Xie Qingyan? He must have been beaten by Xie Qingyan, haha. Su, there are more and more zombies down there. Beside him, Li Xiaoyu was just like Su, with his hands on the glass window, looking at the distant streets with a worried look on his face. In the past, if they encountered zombies, after killing all the zombies in this area, the zombies in the distance always felt powerless. But looking at the situation this time, it seemed that the zombies in the distance were gathering more and more. The so-called zombie tide is like this, just like a wave, coming in waves. Just when you finish killing one wave, you find that there is a faster wave behind. Su looked calm, turned to look at Li Xiu, who was beside him with a worried look, and said, "We may have to stay here for a few days. We'll go somewhere else to find some quilts, food, and so on. The zombie tide cannot be resolved all at once, and it will not be a matter of 1 or 2 days." The zombie tide that Yi Yu and others encountered in the city was a very small scale, perhaps not even half the size of the one Su and others encountered this time. But a zombie tide of this scale was not the largest one Su had ever encountered, so she calmly gave Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia some psychological support. This time, they didn't plan to stay outside for many days. They planned to go back to Bafang village as soon as Yu sniped Lu Yin, so they didn't bring much food this time. The food in the nearby buildings was probably looted by Xie Yaoshi before. Su was a water-based superpower. She, Li Xiaoyu, and Zhuo Shijia didn't have to worry about drinking water, but what about food? What about Yi Yu, who was trapped somewhere? And there were no telling how many snipers were ambushing nearby. What would they eat and drink in the days to come? It was a big problem. Yi Yu said that the transport plane's aviation kerosene had run out, and they had to wait for rescue, but they didn't know when they would go. Rescue would definitely come, and what they had to do now was to try to hold on for a few more days before rescue came. After Su's reminder, Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia went their separate ways to look for quilts, food, etc. The first place they looked for was the dance studio. The studio was empty, with nothing in it except a few large mirrors on the wall and wooden floors. However, Li Xiaoyu still found a few blankets in the teacher's lounge. Zhuo Shijia held 3 or 4 blankets in her hands, smelled them, and found those that didn't smell so strong, so she spread them on the ground for Su to use. She spread about 3 blankets for Su, tested their softness, and said with a frown, "You sleep here. Even though I made 3 beds, they are still pretty hard. Not as good as at home. It's okay for me. I can overcome it." Su turned around and saw Zhuoshizhi busying around like a little bee, and smiled. Walking in the end times, there is no need to be so particular. Just be casual. As they were talking, Li Xiuyu came in with 3 backpacks, sat down on the wooden floor, and began to organize the things in the backpacks. The 3 backpacks contained supplies for the 3 of them, including toothpaste, toothbrushes, cups, towels, etc., as well as a set of spare clothes. Then there were the food that the 3 of them packed when they went out. Su's backpack had the most steamed buns, which were all steamed by her mother before she left. In this world, the people who are most worried when their children are going out are their mothers. No matter how Su promised, he would only go out to play for 1 or 2 nights, and then come back. However, her mother stuffed most of Su's backpack with steamed buns. Li Xiaoyu had some snacks in her backpack, all of which were produced before the end of the world. She was still a half-grown child in her mind, so those snacks were some rice crusts, spicy strips, and the like. Zhuoshizhi's backpack was the largest among the 3, and it contained the most things, but she didn't put any food in it. It was full of disinfectants and portable medical equipment. Su stretched her neck curiously and looked into Zhuoshizhi's backpack. There were tweezers, forceps, scissors, scalpels, complex iodine, alcohol, medical cotton, band-aids, medical masks, disposable medical gloves. These are all the supplies we have. Li Xiaoyu knelt on the ground, looking at Su and Zhuoshizhi with a serious face. I just took a look upstairs and downstairs. Downstairs is an extracurricular tutoring class for children. There is nothing there except various stationery and exercise books. Upstairs is a restaurant. There is some food, but it has all gone bad and moldy. The things that can be preserved have been looted and taken away by the other survivors. What should we do then? Zhuoshizhi had a bewildered look on her face. She had never encountered such a situation since she experienced the end of the world. She was trapped in an environment where she couldn't find any supplies at all. Li Xiuyu shook his head solemnly and looked at Su. Su was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window with a big belly. So Li Xiuyu stood up and walked over and took a look downstairs. In the building opposite, Xia Yaoshi and his psychics were on the 2nd floor clearing the zombies downstairs. But there were too many zombies. Just after clearing out a batch of zombies and before they had dealt with the bodies, the 2nd wave of zombies climbed up, piling up the bodies. Soon, the zombies downstairs, waving their hands, were almost reaching the windowsill on the 2nd floor. It seems that Xia Yaoshi and his team must move to the 3rd floor immediately, otherwise the zombies will step on each other and rush into the building and kill people like going uphill. Because Su and her group climbed higher and there were fewer people, the smell of humans was lighter than Xia Yaoshi's, so the zombies didn't gather here much, but the density was also very high, with a tendency of superposition and accumulation. In this situation, we can't get out and you're pregnant now, which makes it even more inconvenient for you to run and jump. After looking at the pile of corpses below, Li Xiuyu tilted his head to look at Su and advised, I know you don't like to wait for help, but for the sake of the baby in your belly, we can only wait for Yiyu to find a way to save us. Yiyu can't get through this situation either. Su leaned against the floor-to-ceiling glass, looking calmly at the surging tide of zombies downstairs. Although Yiyu's special ability was fire, which could burn the zombies in a group attack, there were too many zombies now, and facing the raging fire, they had the advantage of being completely crushed. Yiyu would definitely not be able to get through. There is another point that Su is unwilling to think about now. According to Yiyu's character, now that Lu Yin has been killed, he has not made any movement and has not set a fire to burn the zombies. That means Yiyu has no ability to move now. At least he doesn't even have the strength to set a fire. Was it because of Lu Yin's level 2 mutant eagle? Yiyu is already a level 3 fire-type mutant. How badly could that level 2 mutant eagle hurt Yiyu? Did it make Yiyu unable to even set a fire? If Yiyu hadn't lost his ability to move, He would have definitely found a way to get to her side first when he encountered this situation today. He knew that Su Su needed his protection. Thinking about it again, Li Xiaoyu has not seen what a zombie tide looks like, so she is not in a hurry. But after being surrounded for 2 months or so, she will understand the horror of the zombie tide. Now, there are enough steamed buns to eat, and water is not a problem, but after 3 or 5 days, the steamed buns are all gone and the snacks are also eaten up. How can she hold on? And the most important point is that Su Su can't hold on here for 2 months. She is about to be 8 months pregnant, and she will give birth in just over a month. Unless it is absolutely necessary, Su Su doesn't want to give birth to Xiao Ai in the tide of corpses. At this moment, while Su Su and Li Xiaoyu were talking, the zombies on the open space were trampled to the ground by the zombies rushing over from behind. The corpses moved and crawled, densely packed towards the second floor where Xia Yaoshi and the others were. The psychics on the second floor fought and retreated into the building, and it looked like they were preparing to climb to the third floor. But the building that Xia Yaoshi and his men retreated to was a European-style holiday and leisure commercial building before the apocalypse. It only had 3 floors. There were so many zombies that they could climb to the second floor. What's the problem with climbing to the third floor later? What's more, the doors and windows of the first floor had already been squeezed out by the zombies below. The first floor was probably already full of zombies. Su Su touched her belly and looked around. Above the surging tide of corpses, several tall buildings stood, quiet as if no one was inside. After thinking for a moment, she said to Li Xiaoyu, "We have to find a way first. Staying alive is the most important thing. The first floor of the building where they are now is probably full of zombies. If these zombies are not cleared out, they will increase in number until there is not enough room on the first floor, and they will have to crawl to the second floor." Su Su remembered hearing about a man in her previous life who had very unique ideas. At that time, everyone was surrounded by a tide of zombies, with nothing to eat or drink. Su Su did not repeat all the darkness that humans faced when they were in desperate situations. She only heard that the man caught a living zombie, tied it to the roof of a building, and attracted mutated crows to eat it. That person hid nearby, killed the mutant crow, and ate its flesh. 3 months later, all the people trapped by the tide of zombies either killed each other or ate each other. After eating the last person, they starved themselves to death. But only the person who ate the crow did not die. Although they didn't know whether this was true or not, Su Su had never seen it with her own eyes, but had only heard of such a thing before, and this matter was somewhat unconvincing, but they had been forced to this point, so they might as well give it a try. Su Su hid this thought in her heart and did not want to speak it out for the time being. Firstly, after she spoke it out, she would not be able to figure out many questions. If Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia had questions, she would not know how to answer them. For example, if the sky was cloudless, how long would it take for the mutant crows to come and eat a zombie if they tied it to the rooftop? Secondly, it was because there was a big bug in the incident she heard. When everyone started eating each other, why didn't the person who ate the crows get eaten? Su Su didn't want to express this idea in advance, as it would give Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia hope and then disappoint them. It would be better to let them expect you to come and rescue them. At least for them, it would be more reliable to wait for Yu to rescue them. Thinking of this, Su Su ordered Zhuo Shijia to find a rope. Although ropes are not edible, they can still be found. About 2 hours later, Zhuo Shijia had not returned yet, and Li Xiaoyu found some knives and tablecloths in the restaurant upstairs. They could tie the tablecloths into ropes in case they were needed. Su Su had been looking at the scene outside the window. She drove 4 watermen, killing people everywhere in the tide of zombies, and obtained a lot of crystal cores, but she still couldn't stop the zombie tide that was growing higher and higher. In the 3-story building opposite, Xia Yaoshi's men had retreated to the outside of the 3rd-floor balcony and were retreating towards the roof. Su Su was sharp-eyed and saw Xia Yaoshi dragging the struggling Xia Qingyan onto the roof. He stayed there like a piece of wood and dared not make any more noise. Xia Yaoshi stood on the top floor of the flat-roofed building and began to shoot lightning towards below. Why bother? At this moment when you can't take care of yourself, you still drag Xia Qingyan, such a burden? Su Su looked at Xia Yaoshi's resolute figure and somehow sighed. After thinking about it, she drove her 4 water people away from Xia Yaoshi and didn't think of taking advantage of the chaos to take Xia Qingyan's life. At noon, Zhuo Shijia finally came back, carrying a large sack of climbing ropes. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, he said to Su Su, "I climbed all the way to the 32nd floor and searched every floor. I was exhausted. I found an outdoor gear store on the 32nd floor. Here, this is the rope you wanted." At the same time as the light of the building diagonally opposite lit up, another light flickered on the other side of the building, and directly in front of Su Su, the block opposite also began to flash with light. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are actually 5 snipers deployed. She was muttering to herself how many bright lights there were. At that moment, Su Su didn't know why, but she felt a little excited inside, and her eyes were a little hot. Just when she thought she was isolated and helpless, there were actually many people around her watching her, including Yi Yu and Yi Yu's teammates. She smiled, supported her waist, stood up with some difficulty, walked to the window with her big belly, and patted the window to show that she was in good condition, and asked Yi Yu not to worry. Then she turned around, walked to the bed that Zhuo Shijia had made for her, sat down, and started to share the steamed buns with Zhuo Shijia. After a while, Li Xiaoyu also came back with a stack of tablecloths in her hands. Everyone knew that the situation was urgent. Li Xiaoyu casually ate a big steamed bun and drank some water released by Su Su, then began to tie the corners of the tablecloth together to form a big rope. By the time Su Su and Zhuo Shijia finished their steamed buns and went to the window to look, they saw that the zombies on Xia Yaoshi's side had almost filled the 3rd floor. All of them went to the top floor and killed the zombies with their superpowers. Among them, there were several people with fire powers who desperately burned the zombies' bodies to prevent the zombies from climbing up by stepping on the corpses. On the top floor, the body of Xia's mother was lying. Xia Qingyan was kneeling beside her with a look of dementia on his face, while Feifei was standing beside Xia Yaoshi with a dull face. She was promoting the growth of a peach tree. The tree was growing fast, but it was obvious that she wanted the trunk to be thicker, so the peach tree was growing horizontally, but not very tall vertically.
Look.
Su Su pointed at the peach tree that Feifei had helped to grow outside the window, and said to Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia behind her, "This Xia Yaoshi must have known that they would not be able to hold on sooner or later, and that they would have nowhere to retreat to, so he specifically ordered Feifei to help her grow a tree so that they could climb up it." Hearing Su Su's words, Li Xiaoyu quickly put down the work she was doing with the tablecloth and went to the window to look. She said with a tisk-tisk sound, "Why aren't there any pink peaches on her tree? If I could eat a few peaches, it would solve my 2 major problems of thirst and hunger at once. You don't understand this. No matter how powerful a wood-type supernatural being is, the plants they create must rely on the land to grow and develop. Growing a tree out of thin air on the rooftop has no purpose other than proving that Feifei's wood-type supernatural power is indeed very powerful. If Feifei wants to grow peaches, with Feifei's current level of supernatural powers, the roots of the peach tree she helps to grow must be planted in the soil. Otherwise, it will just be a tree without roots and will not amount to anything great. Even if they do, it will only attract more zombies to climb up along the roots. Of course, if they all retreated to another building, they wouldn't care whether the zombies followed the tree roots and climbed up. Then Feifei could have peaches."
Li Yao seemed to understand Su Su's explanation.
She pulled her messy hair and turned back to tie her bedsheet. Then the 3 of them rested for a while. Su Su drove her 4 watermen back, dropped a pile of crystal cores, and then turned back to continue hunting for crystal cores. In the afternoon, Li Xiaoyu went downstairs and, following Su Su's instructions, caught a living zombie, tied it up with a bedsheet, and threw it outside the door of the dance studio. He planned to rest tonight and start climbing the stairs tomorrow to tie the zombie to the roof. Although Su Su did not tell Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia what she was going to do with the zombies on the rooftop, Su Su always had her own ideas, so Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia just followed Su Su's instructions. At night, they ate steamed buns again. None of the 3 complained. After eating the steamed buns, they lay down to rest. No one knew what would happen tomorrow. They had time to rest, so they tried to rest as much as possible. Otherwise, if they encountered an emergency tomorrow and their spirits were not in good condition because they did not rest well, what would they do? The night fell little by little. In the sky, there was a big and white moon. The silver moonlight shone in from the window, making the whole dance studio bright. Su half sat on the bed, leaning against the mirror. The mirror reflected the moonlight on the wooden floor, making the whole space look extremely beautiful. Outside this beautiful dance studio, zombies were intertwined together. The earth-shaking sound seemed to shake the three of them out of the dance studio in the next second. Don't doubt it, if there are enough zombies, they really will have the power to knock down buildings. Su, will we die here? On Su's left, Li Xiaoyu was lying on a blanket, asking softly, with a calm expression. Su did not answer. She did not know whether she should tell the truth or not. While she was silent, Zhuo Shijia on her right closed his eyes, turned over, and said very rationally with his back to Su and Li Xiaoyu, "What depressing words are you talking about? Tomorrow morning the zombies might have retreated. We don't have much meat on us, and it's not worth it for them to keep following us around."
Su remained silent.
She thought that although Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiaoyu had never shown any signs of panic, they must have known in their hearts that this situation was something they had never encountered since the end of the world, and that the situation was probably very dangerous. Because she couldn't lie down, Su could only lean against the mirror. Just as she was feeling melancholy, a circle of fire suddenly lit up in the building diagonally opposite the wide floor-to-ceiling glass window. It was a medium-sized circle of fire that was facing her eyes and did not go out for a long time. That was Yiyu. Yiyu was just diagonally opposite her. Su sat up straight, looking at the long-lasting fire circle, and wanted to ask if he had anything to eat. Before leaving, Su's mother was only busy stuffing steamed buns into Su's backpack. When Yiyu left, he only carried a marching backpack and a tent, and at most a sniper rifle. It had been a day and a night. Had he eaten anything? Su supported his waist and stood up. Li Xiaoyu and Zhuo Shijia also stood up hurriedly. The three of them walked closer and saw that there was a rope tied to the back of the crossbow on the glass. The rope was connected to the opposite side in the distance. A small green bundle was slowly pushed out from the center of the fire circle. The small green bundle slid on the rope, passed over the heads of the zombies, and was delivered to the glass window in front of Su. Su drove a waterman and made an ice fist, smashing a hole in the French window. She reached out from the hole and held the small green bundle that was slowly approaching. She looked at the gradually extinguished fire circle on the opposite side, turned around and opened the small green bundle. It was full of compressed biscuits and compressed meat jerky. How stupid! Why give it to me instead of keeping it for yourself? Su really wanted to return these bags of compressed biscuits to Yiyu. She still had a lot of steamed buns, enough for 3 people to eat for several days. Why would Yiyu give them to her if he didn't keep them for himself? Pregnant women need to maintain their meat intake. He is also worried that you are pregnant now and are afraid that you only eat steamed bread and your nutritional intake is not comprehensive. Zhuo Shijia reached out and patted Su's shoulder, then turned around and went back to lie down and rest. Su lowered her head and looked at the bags of compressed biscuits and dried meat in her hands.
She sighed.
This must be all the food you had. He gave it all to her. What would he eat? Or did he know that he was injured and dying so he couldn't eat these foods? Of course, Su guessed that Yiyu was injured. At that time, the speed of the second-level mutant eagle was so fast that she didn't know whether it would cause any harm to Yiyu. Su was a little concerned. Standing by the French window, she calculated the distance between this building and the building across the street. She thought that with her current ability, she could build an ice bridge from here and find a way to pick up Yiyu. She wondered if she could do it. Then she thought of the butterfly wings behind Li Xiaoyu. Since Li Xiaoyu came out of retreat that night, she had put away the wings. In the following days, she wanted to open the wings, but she couldn't. Maybe it was because Li Xiaoyu had not yet mastered her own abilities, so the butterfly wings could not be opened? This is such a pity. If Li Xiaoyu could spread her butterfly wings and fly directly to the other side to pick up Yiyu, the transport plane is out of aviation kerosene. It is impossible to rely on external aid. Su can only find a way by herself. Now that she had such a big belly, she would feel tired after a little movement. If she was in good health, she could build an ice bridge in one day, but now Su turned and walked towards the bed. She decided to sleep first. After 2 hours of light sleep, Su was fully prepared. When she got up, Fei on the opposite side had pushed the tree up to the height of 2 buildings. Xie Yaoshi and everyone else had climbed up the tree, releasing superpowers in their hands and fighting non-stop. It seemed that they had not been quiet for the past 2 hours.
Xiaoyu.
Xiaoyu, Dr. Zhua. She raised her hand and pushed Li Xiaoyu and Zhua Shijia, who were lying on either side of her. After Li Xiaoyu woke up by rubbing his eyes, Su said to Li Xiaoyu, "Listen to me. It's midnight now. Zombies are more active at night than during the day, and there are more zombies outside. Don't worry about the zombie outside the dance studio for now. Go and help me get some crystal cores. Using zombies to attract mutant crows and hunting them to eat is just a legend after all." Su is not sure whether there are mutant crows in the sky now. She thinks she should meet up with you first. Su had just rested for 2 hours, and her mental state felt better. She thought about building an ice bridge. With her ability, it was impossible for her to build an ice bridge to connect such a long distance in one day. Besides, it was midsummer and the external environment could easily melt the ice bridge. She might need a few days, and during these days, she hoped that Yu could hold on and not starve to death or die from injury or bleeding. The reason why she asked Li Xiaoyu to help her hunt for crystal cores was that she had to concentrate on making the ice bridge, which would consume a lot of crystal cores. While keeping the ice bridge from melting, Su could not send 4 water people out to help her hunt for crystal cores, so she could only ask Li Xiaoyu to help. Li Xiaoyu, who was sitting on the blanket, was stunned for a moment. Seeing Su's expression as if she was going to do something big, he immediately nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go hunt for crystal cores right away."
Su.
Zhua Shijia, who was standing at the side, wanted to ask Su what she should do. However, when she sat up, she suddenly felt nauseous and fell on the blanket and vomited. In the moonlight, Zhua Shijia's face suddenly turned extremely pale. Su frowned and said to Zhua Shijia, "What's wrong with you?" "It's okay, Ugh." Zhua Shijia waved his hands, wanting to comfort Su. She thought it was just some stomach upset from eating steamed buns in the past 2 days, but she was about to as soon as she opened her mouth, and she kept vomiting. "Rest first, and don't do anything." Su reached out and patted Zhua Shijia's back. She had a guess. Could Zhua Shijia's reaction mean she was pregnant? Recalling the night when Li Xiaoyu came out of confinement not long ago, when King Kong and Zhua Shijia were disheveled, Su felt that there was an 80 to 90% chance that Zhua Shijia was pregnant. As an expert in obstetrics and gynecology, Zhua Shijia might have some ideas. After vomiting, she sat there with a stupid look on her face, touching her belly, a little bit unbelieving. She didn't dare to give too much hope. She had been disappointed many times and was afraid that this was just a dream. Su stood up and patted Zhua Shijia on the shoulder. Seeing that she didn't react, she looked at Li Xiaoyu and went straight to the floor-to-ceiling window. She glanced at the crystal cores piled up like a hill in the corner. She pushed with both hands, and silver light shone from her palms. The entire transparent glass wall in front of her was covered with a thick layer of ice. Behind the glass wall, a white balcony made of ice emerged from the flat wall of the building. Li Xiaoyu turned around and went downstairs to hunt crystal cores for Su. Zhua Shijia just sat there motionless. Just when the balcony made by Su grew to 2 meters long, there was a bang from a window of the building opposite, and an orange signal firework rose slowly from the window and went high into the sky. However, the building that transmitted the location signal was not the one where Yu was. Ever since Yu gave Su biscuits and dried meat, he had been silent. No movement was seen from him, nor did he come out to kill zombies. Su, who was constantly building bridges, frowned. There were only 13 Special Forces soldiers in Bafang village. What could these 13 Special Forces soldiers do without a transport plane? Didn't you see that Xie Yaoshe had so many people but he couldn't handle it? Outside this large area, Wang Ziqiao, who was still in the maggot tide, also noticed the movement of the surrounding maggots. Specifically, the maggots besieging them seemed to have decreased a lot within a day. After nightfall, the maggot tide in the distance actually had a tendency to retreat. He sent several people to inquire, but they never came back. Later, the psychic who could drive mutant animals told him that in the southeast of Xiangqing, all the zombies began to sway in one direction. Near the old city in the center, the zombies had piled up into a tide. It was estimated that a tide of zombies had formed there and was besieging a group of people. Therefore, the maggots in the safe zone are attracted by the zombies and are heading over there to eat the zombies. Now is their best chance to escape. So Wang Zijiao and Liang worked hurriedly for a day and a night, organizing the survivors and people with special abilities, and began to evacuate in batches, for fear that once the tide of corpses receded, the tide of maggots would come back to block them. In addition to the survivors who are able to move, there are also hundreds of elderly people and children. Are we going to take all of them away as well? Standing in front of a group of soldiers who were busy packing their luggage, behind Liang stood a man dressed in black, who looked a bit like Voldemort. He looked at the mother and child being forcibly separated in front of him, sneered, and continued, "Keeping the women here will still be useful to the army, but the elderly and children are just a burden. Captain Wang wants to take him with him. What can I do?" Liang turned around and didn't look at the mothers and children who were forcibly separated. There was a burst of tragic crying in the front. The children were reluctant to leave their mothers, and the mothers were reluctant to leave their children. The elderly cried, the children cried, and the mothers cried, which really annoyed Liang. IMHO. Voldemort had a hooked nose. He moved his fingers, and a bright red snake came out from his skinny sleeves, wrapped around his arms, and spit out its fiery red tongue. He was the one who could control mutant animals and whose ability level was far higher than Luin. He said, "We don't have enough supplies to begin with. If we want to go to Spring City, the journey is long. The elderly and children may not be able to travel such a long distance. It is better to find a reliable place nearby to send them there." "You mean to send these old people and children to Su? Liang occasionally looked back and saw a 2-year-old child, crying and stretching out her little hands towards her mother. The old woman holding her was shaking and failed to hold the child, causing the child to fall. The 2-year-old child did not care about the pain and got up and ran after her mother with her short legs. Her mother was held by several soldiers and dragged forward. When she saw her child chasing her, the woman who looked like dead suddenly burst out with an astonishing momentum and struggled desperately, crying out her daughter's name. Then, a soldier behind raised the ace of his rifle and knocked the girl's mother unconscious. Liang did not read the rest. She sneered and turned her head to Voldemort and said, "These women, they don't know what they are crying for. Life in Su's place is much better than in the maggot tide. Sending their children there is better than following them." She didn't think that children still needed their mothers. It was hard to survive in the end times, so who would care about whether parents and children were separated? Human beings' usefulness must be maximized. Useless women supported men with their bodies, and men fought for food with their lives. Unnecessary emotions should be reduced as much as possible. This idea was greatly approved by Voldemort. After the two of them discussed it, they loaded the children who were forcibly separated from their mothers and the elderly widows into a car, intending to send them all to Su after they broke out of the encirclement. The psychics who stayed behind in the maggot tide with Xie Yaoshe had been waiting for such a long time. Xie Yaoshe had said that he would be back in the evening, but it was already late at night, and he had not returned yet. The direction of the maggot tide in the safe zone also began to change. So everyone organized themselves and planned to follow the direction of the maggot tide in the safe zone and start looking for Xie Yaoshe. When everything started to move, Chu Xian's people also moved, but they did not prepare for retreat, nor did they rescue anyone. They just followed the maggot tide and took advantage of the situation to hunt for crystal cores in preparation for purchasing weapons and food in the future. After one night, Feifei's peach tree could no longer grow upwards, so she adopted the principle of proximity and grew a very thick vine that connected to the nearest building. Xia Yaoshi was arranging people to defend while climbing along the vine to the nearest building. But that building wasn't very tall because this was the old city area and there were many old buildings nearby. The building closest to Xia Yaoshi was only slightly taller than the current building. The number of zombies on the ground has become increasingly terrifying. Su has sharp eyes and sees that among the densely packed corpses, there are actually several level 3 zombies, not to mention the number of level 1 and 2 zombies. Compared with these basic ordinary zombies, the number of level 1 and 2 zombies is at least hundreds. There was still no movement in the building where Yu was, but there were small-scale supernatural power fluctuations under the other 4 buildings. It was estimated that the remaining 4 snipers could not bear the excitement and ran out to hunt for crystal cores. Su's belly was too big, and Xiao Ai would get angry if she stood for too long. On the one hand, she had to take Xiao Ai into consideration and did not dare to indulge herself too much in her ability output. On the other hand, she wanted to finish the ice bridge as soon as possible so that she could go and see what happened to Yu. She was really tormented in her heart. So Su built the ice bridge for a while, then lay down to rest for a while and eat something. After a night and a morning, the ice platform outside the 7th floor could no longer hold up, so she had to drive piles down to support the bridge deck. Otherwise, if she moved forward a little further, the bridge deck would not be able to withstand the force and would fall down. Because the ice had to be kept from melting in the hot weather, Su had been consuming his own special powers. Half of the mountain of crystal cores was used up in just one night and one morning. Fortunately, Li Xiaoyu helped in hunting for crystal cores, otherwise Su's speed would have been much slower. She estimated that given her physical condition, it would take 2 or 3 days to complete the bridge. During this period, she had to ensure that the ice did not melt, so the output of her supernatural powers could not stop for a moment. Zhuo Shijia was woken up by Su in the middle of the night that day. After vomiting once, she vomited again at noon and in the afternoon. Su thought about Zhuo Shijia's suspected pregnancy reaction. If she was really pregnant, the baby in Zhuo Shijia's belly would be more fragile than her little love. So she gave half of the dried meat that Yu sent to Zhuo Shijia. Pregnant women must ensure nutritional intake. Her ice bridge will take a few days to be completed. Neither Zhuo Shijia nor she can eat only steamed buns. Among the 3, Li Xiaoyu was the only one who had no dried meat to eat. However, Li Xiaoyu was very sensible. She knew that Su was a pregnant woman who had entered the perinatal period, and Zhuo Shijia's various reactions suggested that she was pregnant. She was the only one who was healthy and still so she did not compete with the 2 pregnant women for the meat. When she ate steamed buns, she also took the initiative to reduce her food intake by half, leaving as much food as possible to supply to Su and Zhuo Shijia. With the concerted efforts of the 3, Su's ice bridge was finally built to half its length on the 2nd night. Just as she was about to take a rest, a vine slowly rolled over. The vine was very thin, so thin that it seemed like it would be broken by a gust of wind. Su was stunned, standing on the ice bridge with her bulging belly. There were densely packed zombies under the bridge, stretching out their dirty and rotten hands as if they were hoping that Su would accidentally fall off. But she ignored the zombies and just looked along the curling vines. 3 pink peaches were hanging on the slender vines. Then he heard Xia Yaoshi's people waving their hands and shouting to Su from a faraway building, "Water, water, ice is also okay, change some water." They might not have water-based supernatural beings over there? Su was puzzled and thought of Su Xiaofeng, who was still in Bafang village. After Su Xiaofeng delivered Xia Yaoshi's message, he wanted to stay in Bafang village and cultivate his relationship with Zhenjiu, so Su Xiaofeng did not participate in this operation. That makes sense. In the apocalypse, most of the water and wood-type psychics were transformed into auxiliary types. The weaker water and wood-type psychics would not be easily brought out by the team. Some teams would even spend a large amount of crystal cores to cultivate water and wood-type psychics, because only when there are more water and wood-type psychics, the team will not have to worry about food and drink. So it is understandable that Xia Yaoshi did not bring any water-based mutants with him this time. Su Su nodded, flipped her palm, and condensed 3 thick blocks of ice. Then she saw Fei Fei on the roof of a building in the distance, sitting cross-legged on the ground. With a wooden expression, she drove the slender vines in her hand, which swept away the ice in Su Su's palm, leaving behind 3 big pink peaches. She held on to the handrail of the ice bridge with some difficulty, squatted down with her belly bulging, picked up 3 big peaches on the ground, walked into the dance studio on the 7th floor, glanced at Zhuoshijia, who was sitting on the blanket with a worried and anxious face, handed one of the big pink peach in her hand to Zhuoshijia, and advised, "You are also an obstetrician and gynecologist. If you are indeed pregnant, you know that pregnant women should maintain a good attitude. If you are always anxious and worried like you are now, it will affect the child's personality in the future." Su Su knew what Zhuoshijia was anxious about, because Zhuoshijia had not had a child for many years, and now she suddenly had suspected pregnancy reactions, and as a result, she was trapped here and couldn't get out. Of course, she would be anxious because she was eager to confirm it, and she was also worried because pregnant women pay special attention to nutrition. If she was really pregnant, what should she do if she had to eat steamed buns and dried meat every day? After listening to Su Su's words, Zhuoshijia also felt that it made sense, so he cheered up a little, reached out to take the peach from Su Su's hand, and asked in confusion, "Where did the peach come from?" "The group of people on the other side of the zombie tide exchanged with me. They have a Fei Fei, who is a wood-type mutant, but no water-type mutant." As she spoke, Su Su took a bite of the peach in her hand and placed the 3rd peach on Li Xiuyu's blanket. She felt that this was a very good deal. The other party asked for water, so she exchanged the peach for water, which solved their food problem. The remaining steamed buns could last them another meal. After eating the peach, Su Su sat on the blanket and took a rest, preparing to get enough energy to build her ice bridge. After a while, Li Xiuyu came back with a bunch of crystal cores. He also saw the big peach on her blanket. After asking about its origin, he said to Su Su, "I happened to see Lu Yin's eagle that day, and it would actively attack zombies. I tied the living zombie to the rooftop, hoping to attract some mutant birds to kill and eat." Originally, Li Xiuyu didn't know why Su Su wanted her to tie up the zombies. She just thought that she didn't know when the zombie tide would recede, so she wondered if she could use the zombies to attract some birds so that she could kill them and eat some meat. This was exactly what Su Su thought. Su Su leaned against the mirror, touched her belly, which was beginning to tighten again, frowned, and said nothing. She just looked at Li Xiuyu approvingly, closed her eyes, and fell into a light sleep. After a while, she felt her stomach was too tight and couldn't help but groan. Zhuoshijia immediately came over, touched her big belly, and pressed it. With his other hand, he lifted Su Su's back and said, "Don't worry. Your stomach is a little tight. It may be a normal contraction. Take a deep breath. Don't sit. It's better to lie down. She's not going to give birth now, is she?" Li Xiuyu also heard Su Su's hum, frowned, and came over in panic, but Zhuoshijia shook his head and scolded Li Xiuyu. "It's only been less than 8 months. The baby will be too small after birth. Don't say anything. It will make Su Su panic. Don't worry, it's just normal uterine contractions. Every pregnant woman who enters the perinatal period will have this symptom of false uterine contractions. This is to prepare for the birth of the baby. Su Su, you are in good health and can insist on carrying the baby to full term. Don't panic. We can't panic. We have to stay calm." Su Su thought about her past life. In such a living environment, she managed to raise Xiao AI to full term and give birth to her baby. Why couldn't she eat, drink, and sleep well in this life? She was going to be a mother, and a mother must be strong. When did she need to be strong? It was now. After another rest, Xia Yaoshi sent Fei Fei to drive the vines and bring some peaches. Su Su gave them some big pieces of ice. After exchanging peaches for ice several times, Su Su had too many peaches to eat. She thought to herself that if she was trapped by the tide of zombies for another night, after she picked up Yiyu, she would ask Feifei to bring some rice, and then ask Yiyu to cook it for her, Zhuo Shijia and Li Xiaoyu to improve the meals for the pregnant women and girls. After a night and a day of rest and recovery, Su Su finally completed the ice bridge, which directly connected their 7th floor to the 7th floor opposite. The bridge deck she built was very wide, and the circle of zombies under the bridge near several bridge pillars had been frozen to the point of having little ability to move. Because Zhuo Shijia was suspected of being pregnant, she couldn't stand the cold air of the ice bridge. Even in the hot summer, walking close to the bridge surface would still make an ordinary person shiver. In the early stages of pregnancy, sufficient qi and blood are most needed. If the baby is not given sufficient qi and blood from the beginning, the baby's foundation will not be well built, so Zhuo Shijia can't stand the cold. Su Su left Zhuo Shijia in the dance studio and took Li Xiaoyu and a few peaches with her, crossed the ice bridge, and went to the 7th floor of the tall building diagonally opposite to look for Yiyu. This is a newly built commercial building. The old building was demolished, and the new building has not been completed yet. There is cement everywhere, and it can't even be called a rough house. The glass on the outside of the wall has been installed, but there are still some things inside that are not complete. For example, there are still steel bars exposed in many places. Su Su and Li Xiaoyu searched the 24th floor but couldn't find anything. On the 25th floor, inside a few bags of cement, they saw Yiyu's army green tent, a sniper rifle, a few animal skins, and some blood.
Shushu.
Seeing the bloodstains on the cement floor, Li Xiaoyu hurriedly called Su Su. Su Su glanced over and stared at the bloodstains that had turned dark red. Her heart suddenly jumped, and she grabbed Li Xiaoyu's hand. Hard. How could he get into trouble? Su Su frowned, her face turned pale, and she muttered to herself. He was able to get out of the city, a zombie birthplace, so how could he die on a bird? Calm down, calm down. Su Su took a deep breath. What storms and waves had she not seen? The more chaotic the situation, the more she needed to stay calm. Su Su took a few more breaths and took a closer look at the animal skins on the ground. They looked very much like those from Lu Yin's eagle, with bird feathers still hanging on them. Obviously, the eagle had been skinned by Yiyu. But where was the eagle meat? Was it eaten by Yiyu? Thinking of this, Su Su quickly asked Li Xiaoyu to open the tent in front. When Li Xiaoyu hurriedly unzipped the tent, Su Su clearly felt that she didn't dare to look, and she was afraid to look. She was afraid that what she would see was a seriously injured and dying Yiyu. She had finally planned Yiyu into her future. If Yiyu died, she would have to plan all over again. The key point was that Xiao Ai loved her father very much. Su Su was really looking forward to seeing the intimate interaction between Xiao Ai and Yiyu. At that moment, she felt that she was very unfriendly by yelling at Yiyu on a daily basis. She always liked to order him to do this and that for no reason, and often told Yiyu to die. This was really wrong. After all, Yiyu was Xiao Ai's biological father. No matter how stupid or annoying he was, Su Su should be nicer to him. Li Xiaoyu unzipped his pants and shouted in surprise. Su Su then realized that she had closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes, she saw Yiyu lying in the military green tent. Yiyu was still wearing the desert camouflage uniform he wore on the day he left. He was still wearing a tactical vest and holding a bloody lump of meat in his hand. The meat had become smelly after being exposed to the scorching sun for several days, but Su Su didn't care. She walked into the tent with great difficulty, belly bulging. Then he lifted Yiyu's eyelids again. His pupils were normal, his face was hot, and his breathing was steady. Su Su was furious and slapped Yiyu's face hard. Then he looked up and said to Li Xiaoyu, "He is fine. He may have eaten Lu Yin's 2nd-level mutant eagle and didn't cook it well. As a result, he was infected with the Doomsday virus and is undergoing a 2nd evolution. Or maybe his body has already started the 2nd evolution, and Lu Yin's 2nd-level mutant eagle just gave Yiyu a boost. Anyway, Yiyu's current reaction is the 2nd evolution."
Ah!
Li Xiaoyu squatted outside the tent, looking at Yiyu lying inside the tent, feeling a little amused. Yi was a fire-type superpower, so he had every chance to roast the meat before eating it. Why did he eat it raw? Well, that wasn't the point. The point was that Yi's fire-type superpower was already very strong. If he wanted to evolve a second time, what superpower would he evolve into? Su wanted to borrow Yi's fire superpower to cook. Would this plan work? Suyu, can you carry such a big man? Su was thinking that this place smelled of cement and animal blood, and it was not a good place after all. She still had to carry Yu back. Besides, Zhuoshijia was still left on the opposite side. There were 4 of them, and they couldn't lose one today and another tomorrow. All her supernatural powers are now focused on how to maintain the durability of the ice bridge, so it is difficult to condense a waterman. Such a large ice bridge consumes a lot of supernatural energy. Even if she condenses a waterman now, she can't drive it to carry Yu, so Su can only ask Li Xiuyu for help. That's no problem. Li Xiuyu outside the tent thought about it and nodded, so Su helped Yu up and Li Xiuyu carried him out. Just as she was about to tidy up the scattered items in the tent for Yu, she saw her own photo under Yu's head as he left. It was the photo in which Yu cut up the whole family portrait, leaving only Su. It was folded neatly, as if it was carefully pressed under his head. Su looked down at the photo. Her face was young and a little shy. When this photo was taken, Su was just a high school student, with long hair and bangs that reached her eyebrows. She was soft and pure at heart, gentle to everyone, and always spoke softly, unlike the shrew and sarcastic person she is today. She reached out her fingers, picked up the photo, and silently and calmly put it away for Yu. Then she slowly packed up Yu's tent. With the help of Li Xiaoyu, she repacked the tent and put all the things into the military backpack. She did not disassemble the idle weapons, including a crossbow and a sniper rifle, so she picked up the whole weapons and went downstairs with Li Xiuyu. Li Xiaoyu had Yu's marching backpack hanging in front of her, and a huge Yu was on her back. Su was carrying a tent on her back and holding a sniper rifle and a crossbow in her hands. It took them a long time to go downstairs. When they reached the 7th floor, it was already dark. Zhuoshijia was standing at the other end of the ice bridge, looking at them from afar. Su held her stomach and suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. This feeling was very strong. She frowned and shouted to Li Xiaoyu, who was carrying Yu on his back. Xiuyu, run? What? Li Xiuyu, who was carrying Yu on her back, didn't react, so Su pushed Yu's back and pushed Li Xiaoyu onto the ice bridge. She also immediately got on the ice bridge, and the 2 of them ran towards the center of the bridge, one in front and one behind. Although she said she was running, Su didn't dare to move very fast. She stepped onto the ice bridge and turned around suddenly. She saw a dark figure rushing out from the cement staircase on the 7th floor. Su spread out her hands and several ice spikes appeared in front of her. In front of her, Li Xiuyu was carrying Yu on her back, running forward and turned back, shouting at Su. Su, leave me alone. Go away. Su felt like laughing when she said this. She felt so sad. She had lived in the apocalypse for 12 years and thought she was selfish and cold-blooded enough, but this time she told others to leave her alone. The black shadow rushed forward, but it was stuck when it encountered Su's ice spikes. Half a second later, before Su could see what the black shadow was, a bullet flew over from a certain building and shot directly into the black shadow's head. However, the black shadow was not dead yet. It struggled twice, and then 2, 3, 4, or 5 bullets were fired at the black shadow madly, treating it as a sieve. It is estimated that the snipers hiding in those buildings are using their sniper rifles as machine guns. Su turned her head. In the hot wind, the bridge surface was cold under her feet, and there were surging zombies under the bridge. Her hair was flying, and there was a little heat in her eyes. She thought she was very sad. She actually protected Li Xiaoyu and Yu from danger, out of love. However, she found that in a place she didn't know, she had actually been protected. Thanks. She said this word and looked back at the black shadow. It had been shot dead by a sniper rifle. The black shadow collapsed and fell on the bridge. It was quickly frozen by the cold air. It was a third-level zombie with the ability of speed. Su stretched out her hand and used an ice knife to break open the head of the third-level zombie. She took out an oval-shaped third-level crystal core from it. She weighed it in her hand. It was about the length of a thumb and much heavier than the diamond-shaped second-level crystal core. The third-level zombies have gradually deviated from the inherent form of the human body and developed in all kinds of strange directions. Some are very big, they are the third-level zombies with strength ability. Some are very fast, but very small, so blurry that people can only see their shadows. They are the third-level zombies with speed ability. Like the one Su met this time, his whole body was black, but he still maintained a human shape. He had a head of black hair, which was very long and dragged on the ground like a mop. He was as ugly as it could be. Su frowned and stopped looking at the third-level zombies frozen on the bridge. She took the third-level crystal core, turned around, and walked towards the dance studio. After 2 steps, she tilted her head and looked at the tall buildings around her. After thinking for a while, she realized that since they helped her, why couldn't she return the favor? Since saving Yi was saving him, then saving a few more Special Forces soldiers trapped in the zombie tide would also be saving them. She decided to go back and rest for a night, and start building ice bridges in the buildings with Special Forces tomorrow. She didn't know when the tide of corpses would retreat, when reinforcements would arrive, and when Xiao AI would be born, but the end of the world was so difficult, so she gathered her people first. Back in the dance studio, Su waved her hand and withdrew her ability to keep the ice bridge cold. The ice bridge began to melt and release water in the hot weather. Seeing this, everyone on Xia Yaosher's side stretched out their tongues, wishing they could grab the ice bridge that was constantly dripping and put it on their side. At night, Feifei drove the vines and sent several large peaches over. Su gave them 2 large pieces of ice, then stayed by Yiyu's side, found a piece of cloth, put the cut peach meat on the cloth, grabbed the 2 corners of the cloth with both hands and twisted it, and dripped a few drops of peach juice on Yiyu's lips. Then Su discovered that Yiyu's lips looked ordinary, but when the peach juice dripped on them, it was like dripping into dry soil and was instantly absorbed. She put down the peach in her hand and touched Yiyu's forehead. His forehead was getting hotter and hotter, as hot as if she had touched boiling water. She frowned and unbuttoned Yiyu's tactical vest. She felt the baby in her belly moving faster than usual, so she took Yiyu's hand, placed it on her big belly, lowered her head, and whispered to comfort him. "Don't be afraid, baby. Daddy is just evolving again. It's okay. Look, he is touching you. Daddy is saying, my dear little love, Daddy just needs to sleep for 3 to 5 days. You have to be good, and listen to Mommy." Then slowly, Xiao AI stopped her anxious arching under Yiyu's palm. She really listened to Yiyu, and really liked Yiyu as her father. Su sniffed and lay down beside Yiyu, letting his palms stay on her belly. After being trapped by the corpse tide for so many days, she finally had a good sleep. On the 2nd day, after dawn, Li Xiaoyu went to hunt crystal cores again. Zhuo Shijia also cheered up. After eating peaches and dried meat, he began to search for supplies. Su slept until dawn and felt better than ever before. She tried her ability. Wow, she was promoted. Water and Ice Dual System, 4th level ability. The 4th level and the 3rd level seem to be only 1 level apart, but the energy gathering and release between them are incomparable. It is said that a slight difference can lead to a great difference, which is the difference between the 3rd level and the 4th level. Su was very surprised by this. This person really grew up in desperate situations. Without desperate situations, how could he advance? Since he has advanced, the speed of building a bridge must be much faster than when he was at the 3rd level. Su stopped and started, and in one morning, she built half of the ice bridge. The direction of the ice bridge went directly to the right front. She knew that there was a Special Forces soldier hiding there. In order to build an ice bridge to pick up the Special Forces, they would have to pass through Xia Yaosher's group. That group of people were very much looking forward to Su's ice bridge being built. This way, Feifei wouldn't need to expend too much of her special powers to deliver peaches, and it would also be more convenient for them to communicate with Su Su, such as changing water, which was indescribably convenient. At noon, after eating peaches, Su Su continued her bridge work. At the point closest to Xia Yaoshi and others, Zhang Anquan waved at Su Su and smiled at her. "Do you need help? How can you help?" Su Su lowered her hands, and 2 silver lights poured down from her palms, hitting the silver-white wall under her feet, and the bridge slowly extended forward. Zhang Anquan said, "For example, I can give you a metal cover so that your ice bridge won't melt and fall apart so easily." "So, then what do you want? Look at you keep talking about deals. We are all trapped in this tide of maggots, and I guess the people who come to rescue us are also trapped in this situation. We need to work together sincerely to get out of this predicament, right?" Zhang Anquan was eloquent and had a decent smile on his face. Su Su looked at his moving mouth indifferently. She only regretted that Brother Pai was not around. Otherwise, if she let Brother Pai talk to Zhang Anquan, the two of them would definitely talk very enthusiastically. Ignoring Zhang Anquan, Su Su looked at Xia Yaoshi, who was throwing electric sparks downstairs. He seemed to sense Su Su's gaze and turned around to look at Su Su. His eyes were cold, but with a hint of warmth. He nodded to Su Su and said, "Don't worry that we have other intentions, Su Su. I won't hurt you." "You won't." Su Su sneered and looked at Xie Qingyan, who was curled up on the side with evasive eyes. Although Xie Qingyan's eyes were evasive, Su Su still saw the disgust and hatred in Xie Qingyan's eyes. In his heart, he looked down on Su Su, who was now pregnant, so Su Su pointed at Xie Qingyan and said, "He can. You have to cooperate with me and kill this man first."
"Shushu."
Xie Yaoshi sighed, stopped throwing the electric sparks, took 2 steps closer. With a strong body and a dignified demeanor, he said to Su Su, "Before she died, my aunt begged me to save Xie Qingyan's life at all costs. Su Su, if it were you, would you refuse a dying person's request?" "I can." She raised her chin and stared at Xie Qingyan. The murderous intent in her eyes was obvious, so Xia Yaoshi took another step forward to block Su Su's murderous gaze. Su Su adjusted her gaze, looked directly at Xia Yaoshi, and said, "You have fallen to this point because of Xie Qingyan and his son. I originally thought that your aunt was apologizing to you and asking for forgiveness before she died, but I didn't know that your aunt was saying this to you. You are such a smart person. It is impossible for you not to know that your aunt's behavior is obviously using her death as a bargaining chip to put forward conditions for you. She must be thinking that you don't need to save her anymore, make you soft-hearted, and make you owe her a huge debt, and use this debt to make up for what Xie Qingyan did." Su Su didn't need to explain what kind of person Xie Qingyan was. Everyone present, including Xie Yaoshi himself, knew that he was selfish even when facing his biological mother. The only advantage of such a person was that he had a mother who loved him more than her own life. Now, Xie's mother has used her own life to tie Xie Yaoshi and Xie Qingyan together. If Xie Yaoshi lives, Xie Qingyan will be born. If Xie Yaoshi dies, Xie Qingyan will have to live. This is the real intention of Xie's mother biting her tongue to commit suicide. Everyone can see it clearly, but they are helpless. In the scorching sun, Xie Yaoshi lowered his eyes, and there was a trace of sadness and loneliness on his handsome face. He was a king-like figure in his previous life, but in this life, he was entangled with Xie Qingyan and was destined to be dragged down. His teammate, Su Su, actually understood him, but did not agree with him. In order to save Xie Qingyan's life, he stood on the opposite side of everyone. However, because of his aunt, he still has to protect her. This is a man's duty and debt. If the person he owes dies, he will never be able to repay it in this lifetime. Zhang Anquan stopped talking, and everyone was silent about what they were supposed to do. Xie Qingyan was curled up on the ground, looking like a pus-filled mass, with his head drooping and his medium-long hair covering his entire face. No one saw the viciousness in his eyes, and no one saw the distortion on his face. Xie Qingyan was enduring it. The situation was stronger than him, so he would endure it for now. When he was free from this predicament and gained the upper hand, the first thing he would do was to kill Su Su and the rascal Shi and Yi Yu had. Su Su knew about these psychological activities in her previous life, without Xie Qingyan telling her. In her previous life, before Xie Qingyan gained power, he had already found a way to sell off Su Su's love. Not to mention this life, he also relied on Xie Yaoshi as his long-term meal ticket. Su Su looked coldly at Xie Yaoshi, who was standing in front of Xie Qingyan. He had a determined look on his face, and he was going to follow through on his promise to his aunt. Well, Su Su had nothing more to say to such a person. She respected his loyalty and righteousness, and lamented that he was a great burden in her life, but she was unwilling to cooperate with him. So she glanced at Xie Yaoshi and walked forward while staring at the ice bridge. At first, Gotzi didn't know that Su Su had already picked up Yu, so why did she make an ice bridge? Later, when he saw that her ice bridge was heading towards him, he instantly understood Su Su's intention. She was here to pick him up. Stepping onto the ice bridge, Gotzi smiled at Su Su more sincerely and warmly than ever before. If they accepted Su Su in the past, it was because Yi wanted to be responsible for Su Su, and later because Su Su was pregnant with Yi Yu's child, their special forces regarded Su Su as one of their own. But family members are family members, and Su Su can never be compared with Yi Yu. Yi Yu is their brother who shares life and death, and Su Su is just Yi Yu's relative. They do treat Su Su sincerely, but they still feel that there is something between them. But ever since Yi Yu lost contact on the Special Watch, the remaining 17 Special Forces soldiers, whether they were trapped in the zombie-tied building or far away in Bafang village, were almost going crazy, fearing that Yi Yu would also die in the zombie tide like their other two brothers. When they were at a loss, they could only watch Su Su, with a big belly, building the ice bridge outside. She would take a break when she was tired and start again, little by little, never giving up. Finally, she built the ice bridge to the building where Yu was, and she and Li Xiaoyu carried Yu out on their backs. Just for this reason, no matter how cold Su Su was to Yu, no matter how sarcastic Su Su was, and no matter how unlikable Su Su was in dealing with others, these 17 Special Forces soldiers swore openly that as long as they were there, even if they were the only one left alive in this doomsday, they would protect Su Su and Yi Yu's child. However, Su Su was not the only one that moved them. After saving Yi Yu, she even thought of building a bridge to save other people. The first person to be rescued was Gotzi, because the building where Gotzi was located was closest to Su Su. I won't say any more nonsense. Today, Su Su saved a few people. The entire Superpower Special Forces owe her a few lives, because Gotzi is a third-level Earth-type superpower user. When he was at the second level, he could condense a large stone that could block a passage. And this stone would not melt over time, like Su Su's ice. His stone was just a stone. Once condensed, it would stay there and would not absorb his superpowers to maintain its shape. But his Earth-based ability also has its drawbacks. The bigger the stone he makes, the more of his ability is consumed. Making one stone often consumes more than half of his ability. If he wants to make a stone of the same size, he must wait until his ability energy is restored. This is just like some special skills in the game, which are very powerful, but each time you use it, more than half of the blue bar will be used up. When you use it next time, in addition to replenishing the blue bar, you also need to be within a time limit. So this is also the reason why Gotzi had no way to save Yi Yu. The zombies on the ground had piled up to as high as 3 or 4 stories. Even though he used all his supernatural powers, he could only condense a large stone as high as 3 or 4 stories. There was no point in using such a stone to build a bridge to save Yi Yu. But now that he is reunited with Su Su, everything has become simple. Although Yi Yu has fallen into the second evolution, this does not prevent Gotzi from rescuing the other 3 brothers. Everyone rested for a night. Gotzi shared the supplies he had collected outside with Su Su and the 3 women. He and the other 3 special forces had been monitoring the safe zone for several months, so when they were bored on weekdays, they would take turns going out to look for supplies. This time, they received Yi Yu's letter saying that he wanted to snipe Luin, so the mountains of supplies were divided up by Gotzi and the other 3 men and taken to the 4 buildings. After the end of the world, The supplies that are easier to store are things like sausages and instant noodles. Gotzi also stockpiled a few bags of wheat noodles, 1 or 2 small portable gas tanks, and a small gas stove, specifically for outdoor travel enthusiasts. Su and the other women were very excited. They found a small iron cup from Gotzi's pile of supplies, placed it on the small gas stove, and cooked a cup of noodles. Because the cup was too small, although they had no shortage of water because of Su, they still cooked the noodles in 4 batches to satisfy the appetites of 4 people. The gas tank was too small, and after cooking noodles 4 times, there was no gas left. But this is also good. This meal is very filling. The hot noodles and soup with ham sausage make Su, Li Xiuyu, Zhuishijia, and Gotzi very satisfied. After this meal, everyone has a good night's rest. Tomorrow is another day full of hope. The next day before dawn, Feifei brought a few more peaches. Su didn't say anything, nor did she refuse. She gave them a few large blocks of ice and let Feifei's vines roll them back. Then Gotzi got up and worked with Su. Within 5 hours, they made a bridge made of a mixture of ice and stone, which connected to Mo Weiming in a building. Mo Weiming is a second-order mutated speedster at the 3rd level and has reached the realm of being able to come and go as fast as the wind. With his joining, Su and the others not only have a lot more stored supplies, but also have an additional helper who can kill zombies and hunt for crystal cores. In this way, Su and Gotzi built the bridge faster, and soon, they received the third-level power user, Wandishan. On the same day, the 4th Special Forces soldier, Qingmu, was received. Qingmu's nickname was said to be taken from his birthplace because he was selected to join the Special Forces from the mountains. The trees in the mountains are green all year round, giving people a special spiritual feeling. It is said that the crustal activity in the mountain where Aoki lived was too frequent that year, and earthquakes occurred every few days, causing countless deaths and injuries. The village where Aoki lived was completely destroyed overnight, and his parents, brothers, sisters, and other relatives were all killed. The country sent a rescue team to search the area for 10 days before they found Aoki, who was unharmed, under a rubble. At that time, Aoki was lying on a pile of rubble, and right above him was a fallen, towering tree. The tree originally grew in Aoki's yard, and when the earthquake came, it fell down and fell on Aoki. However, because the tree crown was too dense, there was enough space for Aoki to move under the tree. The reason why Aoki survived 10 days in the ruins without starving to death was that there were several bird nests on the tree, which contained many bird eggs and a large hive with all the bees gone. It is said that Aoki was later taken back by the army and raised in an orphanage run by the army. This story itself gave him some legendary color. When people talked about this child, Aoki, they always had to tell this lucky story of his. Over time, Aoki got his nickname Aoki. As for Aoki himself, he believes in destiny and has a very easygoing personality. Among the 18 Special Forces soldiers, he is the most caring and the least caring one. Perhaps he has believed since he was a child that it was the trees, birds, and bees that saved him, so he has many interests and hobbies that are contrary to the expendables. For example, he can kill people while cherishing flowers, plants, trees, birds, and insects. Also, among the 18 people, he is responsible for interrogating the prisoners. The cruelty of his interrogation methods makes everyone who has seen it feel their scalp tingling, but Ruerue likes to crawl all over him. Occasionally, when he goes out to search for supplies, he always brings Ruerue some snacks such as candy. Perhaps the superpowers that each person awakens are closely related to their own experiences before the end of the world. After the end of the world, Qingmu awakened the wood-related superpowers without any suspense and underwent a second evolution in a very short period of time. This second evolution was rather bizarre. He can turn into a vine. Just a vine. Apart from that, he couldn't do anything else. For example, he couldn't make plants grow like Su's mother and Feifei did. He could make the vines he turned into grow, but he could only make them grow longer or shorter. He couldn't make them bloom and bear fruit. After he turned into a vine, apart from being able to move around like a snake, no one has discovered the other advantages of this power. Well, if there is a lack of ropes, using the vines that Qingmu turned into as ropes can barely be considered an advantage. Aoki's personality is also weird. After his second evolution, he developed the ability to transform into vines. He started to grow vines. In Bafang village, he can often be seen sitting under a tree, talking to himself to the vines, as if he regarded these mindless vines as his own kind. This strange phenomenon made everyone who saw it want to take a detour. In fact, everyone knows that if Aoki's personality were in peacetime, he might have reached the point where he needed to see a psychiatrist, but now is the end of the world, and those who survive the end of the world will have more or less abnormal personalities, not to mention that everyone has their own little quirks. Aoki likes to grow vines, so just let him do it. Anyway, as long as he doesn't hurt himself or disturb others, it's fine. So don't expect such a person with a special hobby to find a way to produce some fruits, vegetables, etc. for Su and the others. It would be best if he could keep his mind calm. Another day passed, and the tide of zombies was even more turbulent than yesterday. The kind of jumping third-level zombies that Su saw in the Doomsday finally appeared. They still retained a trace of human appearance, but tiny suction cups grew on their hands and feet, which could barely stick to the vertical wall. However, there are not many such level 3 zombies, at least at this stage. Xia Yaoshi risked 1 life and 1 injury, and after getting to know the performance of this level 3 zombie, he began his second transfer. The direction of transfer was the ice and stone bridge built by Su and Gotzi. Xia Yaoshi asked Feifei to grow a vine thick enough to connect their side of the ice bridge with Su's, and they climbed up the vine one by one to the bridge. Xia Qingyan has also gone up the bridge.